Nikola came from Croatia in 1884. Got a job from medicine when he reached the US shore. He invented the radio, lasers, motors, and x-rays, and the electric current that powers our world today. He dreamed of unlimited energy everyone could have for free. But he passed away alone and in debt, so those dreams would never be. Braden has a YouTube channel called Statutory Vape. He makes 600 grand a month and he's only 28. Life isn't fair. Tesla died penniless and YouTube stars are millionaires. Whoa. Life isn't fair. Makeup tutorials instead of energy from the air. Whoa. Nikola made a power plant that harnessed Niagara Falls. Cammy speeds her voice up fast and unwraps things from the mall. Nikola thought up robotics before anyone else did. Dylan takes clips other people made and then shows them to kids. Nikola discovered that the atmosphere could help power the whole world. Kyle discovered that you get more views if your thumbnail's a hot girl. Nikola made flying machines that we still can't recreate. Jake is the most annoying person in the world, but 8-year-olds think that he's great. Nikola found radio signals from planets around the galaxy. Tommy beats up all his kids and says they're pranks, which I'll admit is fun to see. But still, life isn't fair. Tesla died penniless and YouTube stars are millionaires. Whoa. God isn't fair, or else he's blind to injustice, or just doesn't care. Whoa. The universe is cold and unfeeling. Our progress, it doesn't give a damn. If Tesla wanted funds to get his work done, he should have invented the internet and the webcam. Whoa. Life isn't fair. Tesla died penniless and YouTube stars are millionaires. Whoa. God isn't there. And if you like this song, please click subscribe right there.
We live in a world where a very large sum of our lives is spent thinking about how we'll make it through to the next day. Be it that we need a distraction, that we need money, or that we are constantly struggling with a mental illness that grasps us with its cold, unfeeling hands. We, however, do have the privilege to remember that we've survived for so long with whatever life has faced us with. And most of us have never faced extreme violence. Today I've dragged Alyssa along, solely so I could annoy her by telling her we're talking about true crime, when really talking about the survivors of the Columbine incident. Alyssa?
Hello.
So,
Can you hear me?
I can. Okay. Looks like we got a good chat too. So, I did something different for this stream. I actually grabbed a laptop and it's sitting next to me, so I'll be able to read the chat on the goddamn laptop to the right of me at any time. You guys are basically your own computer. Okay, so Alyssa, how much do you know about
Yeah.
Columbine?
Quite a bit, I think. I've followed it since it happened. I was like, 8 years old, I think, when it happened. They like immediately, when they started going around to schools, like survivors would go around to schools and tell the stories of what happened at Columbine. That's probably the first time I heard about it.
Let me just do one thing. It's always a pain for me. I always struggle with this. And done. There we go. For whatever reason, I have to always adjust that. Anyway, so what I actually know of it is when I was in high school, we were all talking about weird topics that we were interested in. And I actually spoke more about the story of Joe Hill. And some other kid mentioned Columbine and started talking about Columbine in general and how much their plan actually went into depth and just the insane amount of preparation that the two boys had done just to then end up not understanding how to create explosive devices. So
Yeah,
the
they failed.
entire thing could have been much worse. Thankfully, it was not. So afterwards, I decided, Jesus fucking Christ, I'm going to go Google this. After Googling everything, I came to the conclusion that life is fucking terrifying, and we never exactly know how terrifying it's going to be. So just enjoy it. Now, I got some articles, I got some videos. We're going to start with a quick article, because
Okay.
how we're going to be doing this stream, guys, is we're going to talk about the survivors of Columbine. We're going to avoid actually giving the two people who perpetrate all this more credit than they deserve. I just want to make sure that that I'm happy with how this looks. That looks awfully fuzzy on my end. That might just be the quality, though.
I think it looks okay to me.
Yeah, it's because on my laptop, it's 240p.
Oh.
I'm going to send you this directly so that you can scroll through it. Make it a little bit easier for you. Articles, I'll just I'll message them on Discord to you so that you can read them that way. All right. Do you want to start or do you want me to start?
Reading it?
Yeah.
If you want to start, you could start because I'm trying to pull it up.
Okay. Oh, you can't. Hold on. That should be better, John. Okay. 20 years later. Oh, wow, voice crack. 20 years later, the Columbine High School shooting still plays out in the minds of the people who survived it. In 1999, there was no frame of reference for what a tragedy like this even was, says Austin Eubanks. Eubanks was 17 and a Columbine junior in 1999. I remember when a teacher came into the library, yelling for everybody to get under the table, and somebody had a gun, he recalls. We stood up because there was no way that could be possible. Eubanks didn't return to school for his senior year and hired a tutor instead. Doctors prescribed him with drugs to treat the pain of his injuries, but he says they didn't account for the mental injuries that came with surviving trauma. What started as prescriptions turned to alcohol, marijuana, illicit narcotics, you name it, he says. I was going to do whatever I could to not have to feel present. Amy Over was another survivor of the Columbine attack. Having been involved in this tragedy has caused basically 20 years of my mental health journey, she says. Over, who was a senior at the time of the shooting, said the tragedy left her with PTSD and anxiety. Craig Scott lost his sister, Rachel, that day. He was a sophomore at Columbine, and his sister was a year below him. My journey has been one of dealing with anger, then coming to a place of forgiveness, he says. Scott now travels the country, sharing his sister's story as part of Value Up. And his sister has a very fascinating story. He just reads Rachel's books. I'm just gonna pin that comment. You see where I left off?
To be honest with you, no, because my thing is not working. Hold
Okay.
on.
Can you see on my screen?
Yes.
Then just read off my screen.
Right.
I ended right here, so you'll be able to continue from my journey.
Okay, hold on one second. Let me just make it bigger. Where were you?
You can continue right from my
Oh, okay.
journey.
My journey has been one of dealing with anger, then coming to a place of forgiveness, he says. Scott now travels the country sharing his sister's story as part of Value Up. He shares his sister's writings from her journal, hoping it will make an impact in the lives of students in school today. Rachel wanted to start a chain reaction of kindness and passion, Scott says. 1 million more people have picked up her challenge after traveling the country since I was 16 years old, speaking to over 1 million people in person. There's a lot more good out there than evil, and a lot more good out there in people.
1 second. So, non-microwavable actually said that Rachel's challenge actually came to her school.
Yeah, I think that was the one that came to my school also.
Sadly, we didn't get that. We just got Dare. We just got Dare every single year, like 5 times a year.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted us to do more drugs, I think. Would you like to continue?
Sure. Missy Mendo was a 14-year-old freshman and was sitting in math class during the attack. She is now the mom of an 11-week-old daughter and worries about the day that she will go to school. Not being able to hold her hand and be there and protect her is something I have a lot of anxiety about, she says. Amy Over's daughter is 13 and will soon be in high school. It causes a little bit of anxiety when I think about my daughter going to high school, she says. In the back of my mind, there's always that feeling that what if, she says. But I can't live in the past. I have to live in the present. Over and Mendo both work for the nonprofit group, the Rebels Project. The organization... What?
I'll pick up from here, if that's okay.
Okay, good.
The organization was started after the Aurora Theater shooting in 2012 as a support network for victims of trauma. We wanted to get together and want people to know they would have help in some ways, Mendo says. The Rebels Project now travels to communities impacted by the trauma of mass shootings. It's a beautiful thing when you get to meet another survivor and just to connect, Over says. It's powerful. It's so powerful. It helps me after 20 years heal. Eubanks also uses his story of survival to inspire others nationwide. And we'll be getting to his story. He has a great TED Talk on that. I think that's even the link. Oh no, it's just a site. He didn't just survive the Columbine shooting, but also addiction from drugs doctors gave him after the attack. I think that's really important that not as survivors of trauma, but survivors of addiction speak out and they share their story, Eubanks says. Just because you never know when your story is going to change the life of somebody else. Eubanks now speaks and consults with state governments, mental health organizations, and hospital organizations about the correlation between trauma and addiction. As Columbine now marks 20 years since the attack, Scott hopes people use the anniversary of something evil to find the good in others. If you want to honor those who were killed at Columbine 20 years ago, take the time to value somebody in your life. Take time to say something or do something that shows value in someone else, he says. If you do that, that will honor my sister, my friends, and other people who were killed at Columbine. So, a little bit heavy when beginning. That's not going to be a theme, I promise. And by promise, I lie. So, are you ready for the first video?
I think I'm ready.
Okay. So I actually have everything bookmarked, but I'm opening the bookmarks on a separate page. This way it's a little bit difficult for you to see what's going to happen next.
Okay. So now the focus here is going to be more on the victims and the survivors, right?
Yeah. I think that a lot of people give the two perpetrators way too much credit. And
yeah.
It's really sad because there are some great survival stories. I will also go off on a little bit of a tangent about Parkland at some point. I feel it's very important to look at the survivor stories that we have. Survival stories are fucking fantastic, and we don't talk about enough of them. We just talk about the wackadoos. So let me make sure this is good quality. 480p. No, fuck that. So this is Casey Johnson. Now, to give you an idea of what happened with her, because you said before the stream started, I asked if you knew any of these names. Casey Johnson, I think her name was Rooksgegger or Rooksgregor before, but she's married now. She was actually in the library. She had been shot in her shoulder, and it had actually shattered her shoulder bone. It was a weird story that she gets into every once in a while. And I don't think this variant of the story gets into it. She was pressured into telling her story because she ironically works with the doctor who saved her arm. And he realized that she could use her story to do much more good. So we'll listen to her story of her tissue recipient. And I want to just point out this channel that there were many different variants of this video that I could have pulled up. There are so many videos with Casey Johnson, and I felt it very important to always mention smaller channels do not get noticed enough. If I were to just take this search real quick and put it in here, you can see that she had a talk at Google. This was an absolutely trudgingly long video to get through because Google makes it very redundant. There's no real interview, it's just her speaking, and that can work. This is a fantastic video as well, but honestly, sometimes a smaller channel is exactly what you need, and this is the best video I could find on this topic. So, guys, subscribe to smaller channels if you see them and you see they're doing good. Alright, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Feel free to tell me if you want to pause it for a second for any reason.
Okay.
Heard the shot that hit me, but it was like slow motion where he was, you can kind of see in my shoulder, he shot me right here. He was about 5 feet behind me, and the shot came, and as I fell forward, my arm kind of flew through the air and landed on the ground in front of me, and it knocked all the wind out of my lungs.
Welcome to The Second Act, a monthly video series introducing you to interesting people with inspiring stories. Every guest has a connection to organ, eye, and tissue donation and transplantation. I'm your host, Brianna DiPilato. Today's guest is Casey Johnson, Columbine High School shooting survivor, motivational speaker, author, tissue recipient, and mom of 4. This is Casey's story.
We grew up in Lakewood, and then around my freshman year of high school, we moved to Littleton. My parents had 5 acres and a really big barn. My sister and I loved riding horses, so we had a couple horses out back, and that was a really fun space to grow up and have lots of freedom to play outside. What else? I started a high school at Bear Creek, and after 2 years, I decided to switch over to Columbine. I had a really rough sophomore year at high school, at Bear Creek High School, with some friend situations and suicides, and I just felt like I needed a new start. So we switched over to Columbine, which is where my best friend from the barn went.
So I kind of want to explain this because some of the other videos she gets to talk about this, but it's very painful for her to talk about. So she doesn't like to talk about too much. She had a friend group, and one of the boys in the friend group had committed suicide, and shortly after, another person in the friend group also committed suicide.
Say that again.
So back what she was talking about. She was in a friend group, and in this friend group, one of her male friends committed suicide, and she was feeling down, and then another one of her friends had committed suicide as well. So in order to kind of alleviate the mental health trauma that she was facing, she actually transferred from her original school to Columbine, so that she could get away from the stress and anxiety of the situation she was living, so she could go to a school with her best friend at the time.
Gotcha.
So I wanted to be with her more, which is why I picked that school. And before that, I competed in gymnastics and horseback riding. Those were my passions, and really took up all my time competing on my horses.
Did you start to feel comfortable there pretty quickly though, or how was your experience during that first year?
So it's the only year I went there, and yeah, I felt comfortable. I think Lindsay and I, that was my best friend, we rode to school together. We went home to my parents' house for lunch every single day, where we'd hurry, make the 10-minute drive home. My mom would already have lunch laid out for us, and then make the 10-minute drive back to school just in time to get to 5th or 6th period. So yeah, it was comfortable, really big school, lots of people, but it was fine for me.
Bring us back to April 20th, 1999. It's been 22 years. We just crossed that milestone last month or so, which is just kind of crazy to think about, because I think we've all heard of, the event that happened or the shooting that happened. So if you can bring us back to April 20th.
April 20th, 1999, like you said, 22 years ago, but it seems there are days when I feel like I was just there, and then there's days where it feels like it's been a lifetime ago. But I can always take myself very easily back into that exact situation and what it felt like, and how the day went. I remember absolutely everything from the day. And maybe one or two minor details that didn't stick in my mind, but most of it's all there. It was a couple days after a big horse show where I was leading Colorado in several events to get to the World Championships. So I was so excited. I was having a great spring, and went to school that morning, and it was normal like any other Tuesday morning until the lunch hour when I couldn't find my best friend, Lindsay, at which point I went to our locker that we shared to look for her, didn't find her, went to her math class to see if she was there. And by the time I realized I wasn't going to find Lindsay, I walked in front of the library to go to my car, but then realized it was too late to go home. I wouldn't have time to get home and back. So for the only time, I stepped into the library, picked up a silly gossip magazine, and sat by the window. And as I was sitting there, some kids heard some popping noises outside, so we kind of all looked out the window to see what was happening, but didn't really notice or see anything specific. Until a couple minutes later, a teacher came running into the library, screaming at the top of her lungs that there were boys outside with guns. We needed to get down and hide.
All right. So you got her story so far, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's actually worth noting that two of the survivors I'm going to be playing videos from, Austin Eubanks and Casey Johnson, were actually both in the library when this happened. So we actually will get two different variations of exactly what happened. Just so you know, like, this was not deliberate. This was like a weird, ironic thing, because when they started, they went right for the library and the cafeteria. They attempted to go for the cafeteria and then make the library floor. I know you know this, but just so anyone listening, they wanted to make the library floor collapse onto the cafeteria students to get rid of everyone in the cafeteria and library, and then use their ammunition to take out any survivors.
Right. So the bombs that they had made were supposed to do that.
Yes.
And get our heads under the tables. And it really took a couple seconds for it to register that this was real. I mean, how can this be happening? But the panic in her voice made it obvious that this was a really serious situation. So we ran, everybody in different directions, hiding under tables, pulling chairs in next to us to try and hide. So about 10 feet in front of me was a long row of computer tables that were kind of sectioned off. And I picked one of the sections and pulled a chair in next to me and thought, I'm pretty small. I've got an awesome hiding spot. There's no way they're going to find me here. And I just started praying while I was under there. It was terrifying. I mean, the guns were getting louder. People were screaming. As soon as they entered the building and were shooting and setting off pipe bombs, the fire alarms started going off. I mean, there was so much going on. And then I knew right when they came into the library, because it just felt like a gut punch of evil came into the room. It was so heavy, so terrifying. They were laughing, pointing people out, shooting. I mean, and not necessarily anybody in particular, just whoever was in their way. And I was kind of just, because I couldn't see anything and I was trying to stay still and hidden, I was using my ears to try and figure out where they were going and how close they were getting to me, when I realized that one of them was about 5 feet behind me. And I turned to look at him, and he was kneeling down, pointing the gun to the boy who was hiding in the section of the table behind me. And that boy didn't have a chair pulled in next to him. And I knew the shooter was going to kill him and then turn the gun on me. I just had a feeling that I would be shot. I knew it was coming. So I turned around and plugged my ears and did my best just to crouch down and protect myself as best I could. And I heard the shot that did kill the boy behind me. And then I heard the shot that hit me. But it was like slow motion, where he was, you can kind of see in my shoulder, he shot me right here. He was about 5 feet behind me, and the shot came, and as I fell forward, my arm kind of flew through the air and landed on the ground in front of me. And it knocked all the wind out of my lungs, to which he told me to quit my complaining, but he used much different language. And
He said, "Quit your bitching." By the way, that's actually on police record.
Oh, okay.
I felt like if he saw me still breathing, he would think he needed to shoot me again. So I quit breathing, pretended to be dead, and he moved on to other parts of the library. At which point I looked, when I knew he had gone far enough and couldn't see me, both shooters, I opened my eyes and looked at the damage, and my arm was devastated. My shoulder and my hand, and the bullet had gone straight across my neck. I couldn't move at all. And there was so much bleeding. I was just trying to stop the bleeding and really wondering if I was even going to get out alive. A few minutes after that, everybody in the library got up to leave. I guess the shooters left the library to go down to the cafeteria. And one boy stood up and told us all to get out the back door of the library. But I couldn't move. I couldn't get that chair out beside me because my arm no longer worked. And so I started hollering for help. And that's when a boy came to my rescue, really. He pulled the chair out from beside me, pulled me up to my feet, and we ran. And for the next 10 or 15 minutes, I ran through fields, hid behind police cars, just holding this flailing arm next to my side and trying to stop the bleeding. And probably 20 minutes later, I actually got loaded into an ambulance. But right before the ambulance came, I was laying in this grassy triage area, and an off-duty nurse came to my side, and she was taking care of me, holding pressure on my wounds. And the first thing I asked her was, "Are they going to cut off my arm?" I was still very calm, but I knew it was really bad. And she couldn't tell me no. And I knew she was trying to phrase it in a way as to not scare me. And she very much in a calm nurse way said, "You will be going straight into surgery. They're going to take care of you." But I really thought that there was a chance I would lose my arm as I was being loaded into the ambulance. But I remember in the ER, my parents walking in. And I even remember the doctor saying that my parents were on their way, and feeling so guilty that they were going to walk into this situation and see me like this. Of course, it wasn't my fault, but I did not want my poor parents to have to experience seeing me in such bad condition.
So, how do you feel about all of this? Her story?
How do I feel about it?
Yeah.
Well, I don't feel great, right? It makes you feel like a little icky, like, oh my God, I can't imagine, going through something like that.
Yeah.
The fact that she was still like coherent and running through fields with her arm hanging off of her is crazy.
So, she was actually the quiet kid in class. That's what she was known for. So
yeah, she comes off as that.
Yeah, that's why I like her story probably a bit more than a lot of other stories that have come out, because she has a very different take. It wasn't that she wanted to become an activist. It was that she was told, "You have an opportunity to help us with a donation," and she was a nurse, so she felt kind of obligated to do so. She was told there was a method at which she could use her story to encourage people to donate more. And then, after being a little pressured into it, but also a little bit, yeah, you know what, that's a good point, there's not enough of these donations out there.
Right.
She's very thankful for that. In the 42-minute Google one, which is just way too long, she goes through every single detail. This one, she goes through just the right details, except like maybe 3 that really kind of define Casey as a person. This specific interview is nice because she wanted to do this one, whereas most other interviews in the beginning, she wasn't sure what she wanted to share, what she didn't want to share.
Right.
I think, honestly, I find Casey's story to be the most saddening of a lot of the ones that we'll hear today.
Really?
Because every variant of it, most people were concerned with themselves and their own safety. Casey was a little more selfless with the way that she told everything. So,
Mm-hmm.
in an upsetting way, Austin will talk about how his friend sadly was killed during Columbine. But Casey always mentions that there were people all around her, and that's because out of the 16 victims, 10 of them were actually in the library.
Yeah, I know. That's like the majority of people that died were in the library.
Casey was in the center of where everyone had been sadly slaughtered. So Casey had a lot more of a first-hand glimpse into the psyche of the two people. Whereas the others had maybe a passing glance or glimpse of what they were.
No, they spent, I don't know, I'm not sure if they actually spent the most time in the library, but it was the most telling, if that makes sense. Like, I know they were kind of like taunting and like kind of making a game out of it, and they were saying things to their victims before they shot them.
Yeah, Dylan ran around shouting things like, "This is what we always wanted to do. This feels exactly like I thought it would."
Right.
And Eric, being the more aggressive one, was very violent and hostile, but not very talkative. So Dylan went around the library taunting people. I think it was actually Dylan who taunted Casey. I could be wrong on that. But I believe it was Dylan who taunted Casey. And that's kind of telling, considering that he had I think I said 16. I actually want to correct myself. I think
Hello?
It was 15.
Oh.
It was 15, not
I lost
16.
you for a
Sorry.
second.
Yeah, sorry about that. Probably Discord.
Yeah.
So 10 of the 15. So that's 2/3 were in the library. And
Yeah.
she had to deal with the fact that she was being taunted while she was basically quivering in fear right next to someone.
Waiting to die, basically.
It's a little bit more telling than the other stories that we'll listen to, only because she was very aware of her situation around her, whereas other people were only worried about themselves. She was
Right.
very quick with her thinking. And that's not to say anyone was selfish. I mean, that's the natural reaction most people would have.
Oh, yeah. Of course. You know, it's when you're in that situation, it's what do I do to survive? You're in survival mode.
Yeah. For her, survival mode, being the quiet kid, just happened to be paying attention to everything around her.
Right.
All right, you ready to keep going?
Mm-hmm.
So then when they walked in was the first time that I cried. And I asked my dad, "Did you see the hole in my arm, Daddy?" And he said, "I see it." It was big. And right from there, I went into surgery a few hours later, and it was a mission to keep me from becoming an amputee at that point.
Talk us through, I guess, the days and even hours, I guess, that led up to your surgeries and the beginning of the healing of the arm.
So initially, like I said, there was a 4-inch hole in the back of my shoulder. The bones in my shoulder, the top of the humerus, were completely shattered to dust. The x-ray literally looks like a cloud of dust. So there was just no structure left to my arm whatsoever. And I had lost half my blood. So truly the first day was saving my life, getting me blood, and cleaning out the wound. Not that they knew what they were going to do with it yet, but they weren't giving in to amputation quite yet. And then a couple days later, I was in the ICU for about a week. So a couple days later, they put me through another surgery to stabilize, lengthen the arm back out, and clean it out again. This whole time, I mean, I don't know any of this. I'm not feeling well, and I'm under all the medications. But in the meantime, there were doctors across the country talking about what to do. I mean, I was missing so much muscle, so much of the soft tissue, that it was just a little tricky to put in a metal joint. And they didn't want to amputate. They wanted to give me the best opportunity at a normal life as possible. They knew I was competitive with my horseback riding. And then a doctor in Denver came and suggested that they use an allograft. My parents had never heard of such a thing in their life. When Dr. Wilkins came into the room in the ICU, I was not part of this conversation. And he suggested this. I mean, they had heard of organ donation through TV shows, and you hear the big stories, but bone donation was so new to them. None of us knew that that was an option.
So I want to explain this because I have a little bit more of a knowledge. I know someone who's gotten a bone donation of sorts. They use cadaver bone. So the person who donated was someone who had passed away previously. Alyssa?
Yeah. You said your friend, someone you know, had a donation?
Yeah,
a bone
they
donation?
they had a jawbone donation after breaking their jaw.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's a normal thing. People who
That's
pass
crazy
away.
to think. It is a normal thing, but it's even like organs and stuff like that. It's crazy to think like you are receiving something from somebody else's body.
Cadaver bone never functions the same because it's not the bone that you're used to, but it does get
Right.
I think up to about 76. I could be wrong. I'm probably throwing numbers away that I don't remember off the top of my head, but it's like a 70% functionality efficiency.
Right.
So
And he was saying he felt like this was the best opportunity to let me keep my arm and have some amount of function, even if it would never be 100%. It would still be two arms. I could still write eventually. As a side note, my hand was also completely shattered, and they also used allograft bone to put my thumb and wrist back together. So really, these allografts, the donated bones, helped put my whole right side, my dominant side that I write with, back together.
At the time, you probably didn't think much about it being donated bone, but I guess what would you say, not just to the doctors who clearly thought through all of the different possibilities to make you have a functional arm again, what would you say to the tissue donor?
So I have thought about that so much because initially I was not in a mindset to even think about that. I was in complete survival mode, and they saved my arm and I was put right to work learning how to use it. And I was in the hospital 2 weeks. I left with severe PTSD. I could not even function mentally, emotionally at all. And then I had this devastating injury that I was trying to work through. I couldn't dress myself. I couldn't shower myself. For so long, everything was taken away from me. I literally had to learn how to do life again, how to write again, how to get dressed again, how to move my arm again. And so it didn't ever cross my mind. Now I knew what they told me, how I got the bone. But again, for so long, I was just surviving until I became a nurse. So I became an oncology nurse at one point, and I was using my arm so much, it was never fully functional, but I was able to work and do most normal things. But in my nursing career, I started thinking more about the donor because I was dealing with people who would become donors. And then Dr. Wilkins asked me to go give a presentation to the American Association of Tissue Banking in Keystone. And I was not a speaker. I didn't want to speak at all. I didn't like being in front of people, but this man saved my arm. So I said, sure, I'll come talk for you. And so I did it, and I was trembling and shaking, telling my story to 1,000 people. And at the end, somebody asked the question, did the donation save your life? And I was so taken back by that question because my initial response was, well, no, it wasn't an organ donation. But I was thinking about it, and I'm like, but did it save my quality of life, which equals living? Like, I could have been a one-arm amputee at 17, and my life up to that point when I was on that stage speaking would have looked so different had I become an amputee. And at the time when I was giving that speech, I had just had our third child, and I thought, I've been able to hold 3 babies at this point, nurse 3 babies, hold the hands of 2 of my girls as we cross the street. That is life. This donation absolutely saved my life and gave me a second chance at living as whole as possible, despite the things that had happened to me. And it was with that one question at a speech that I never wanted to give that completely changed my mindset and made me start thinking about my donor and what a gift that was. And it was shortly after that that I reached out to the donor family through Donor Alliance to just let them know how grateful I was and how through me going to tell my story, her story continues. And what an honor it is for me to do that, to continue the legacy and the story of somebody else through my day-to-day living.
I shouldn't be laughing, but John in chat is just. John says, I feel like she's full of shit. Boo hooed, I got shot. Jesus Christ, John. I hate and love you at the same time. Oh, yeah, I haven't mentioned this really on the Discord. I will be streaming every fucking day this week, so God help me. I'm going to hate myself after I'm done this week. So,
I'm happy about it though.
Alyssa, did you learn anything from this video?
Learn anything? I learned about bone donation.
Yeah. So,
because I didn't really know about that.
So, fun fact, your body can actually reject cadaver bone.
I was just that's actually one of the questions I was gonna ask you. Like, just the way an organ can be rejected, can your body reject the bone?
Pretty easily. The bone also has to be the right structure. So if the bone of the person replacing your previously existing bone is like the wrong size, it can really fuck up everything. And in some cases, the way that works is that you get the replacement temporarily, or you get permanent. If you get temporarily, there's usually like a regrowth or something like that. I don't know exactly how it works. I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to pretend to be a doctor. I just kind of know what my buddy got after he fucking hurt himself, because, of course.
Right. So are there like things you have to go, like you have to take meds and stuff like that to make sure the rejection doesn't happen? And
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff that goes into it. There's medication. I think there's antibiotics in a lot of cases. I don't know, though. Like I said, I don't deal with this. But
I'm sure at first.
For the most part, it's just trying to adjust to living with this cadaver bone inside of you. And there's also the rehabilitation. You're not going to be able to use the arm right away.
Right.
Oh, we'll come back to this later. So, the biggest thing with that is that when you start out in a situation like Casey, they tend to take them for granted. Not because they mean to, but because they don't expect anything important to come out of it. They expect, I'm just going to live my life normally, I guess, from now. But for Casey, she had the rare opportunity to kind of look in the mirror and say, this is a gift. And so she's gone across as many things as she can. Say, look, you should donate when you die. You should become an organ donor. You should become a, I don't remember what they're called. Like tissue something. It's like you should donate yourself basically after you pass away.
Yeah.
So
how do you feel about that?
I think honestly everyone should sign up to be donated. I would love to be donated to a sex dungeon. I want to be the skeleton hanging on the wall, across from the people getting whipped. But honestly, like you're gonna die, so you really should consider donating yourself to science, to medicine, or something. Your body is just kind of wasting the ground unless you plant a tree over top of it. It's all about the way that you waste your body. Like, cool, you can have it incinerated, put into an urn, and then call it a day. You can have it put underneath a stone. But realistically, you can have a tree grow out of wherever you're buried. You can actually save someone's life. You can save someone's well-being. You can be used for so many things. It's just insane. What do you think?
I don't know. I don't know how I feel about having my organs being donated. I understand that it's something that could save someone's life, but I also feel like funny about it.
Sorry. I'm reading chat at the same time. I just want to say, Kale says, I believe you can donate bone marrow while living, but that it hurts super bad. Bro, I'm gonna have my husband turn me into a lab-grown diamond. Yeah, and Soda said, don't have your body put in a friggin' box in the ground. You're taking up space.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that too.
You know, we should get rid of all these quote-unquote Indian burial grounds and just find a better use for the space. Put
If
casinos with
you
them.
want to dig them up yourself, go ahead. I will
Well,
not be there
hold
when
on.
it happens.
Hold on, I just want to point out, you know that there's a specific word for digging up bodies?
Yeah.
Do you know the word?
Oh God.
Exhume. You're exhuming the
Exhume.
bodies.
For some reason I was like excavating, but that's not the word, and I knew it wasn't the word, but it was close.
Sorry. Kale just said, I can only imagine becoming the family heirloom that's passed down. Doug said, that is why I'm going to be put in the car. So, Flim asked a very good question about, well, I asked Flim a question, and I want to hear your thoughts.
Mhm.
So, Flim had said that he wished that there was more security in schools. And I asked him what he
Okay.
would do. And he said that he had a lot of vague answers, but he has a good point. And the point was that school security isn't the best. You can't
School
give them
security,
guns because you can't trust them necessarily.
right.
And then it's things like that. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I wasn't gonna say anything. I was listening.
No. What do you think?
Oh. Well, school security does suck. It's like the mall cops. They just walk around. They don't really do anything.
Paul Blart, mall cop. Paul Blart, mall cop.
Yeah, that legit though. That is what
Yeah.
that's how it is. Um, I mean, some schools have like metal detectors and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't really know, to be honest. Some people will say like we should arm all of our teachers. I don't know if I feel great about that either. One bad day, and we just have a whole, you know,
People
mess
use.
going. Just the other day, a teacher was shot by a 6-year-old at a school.
Let me see if I can find this. And yeah. A 6-year-old.
I mean, it was targeted. They were specifically targeting the teacher.
Jeez, how did that 6-year-old know how to shoot, though? That's the thing that bothers me.
Yeah, well, it was his mom's gun.
Alright, so let me show you this picture, actually. So this is a picture that I remember going around frequently back in the day. And it was people talking about Israeli school security. And it was just this woman holding a gun, the rifle. I don't remember the context, but there were a lot of pictures like this taken away.
Right.
And you used to say, look, this is security in other countries. We don't have shootings. People forget that in Israel there's actual terrorism done by the Palestinians and the Israelites. So it's like both sides have a constant feud with one another. And they're constantly targeting each other in violent ways. It's so common. And we have such a weird, narrow view of it, so people will either go on the side of Israel or on the side of Palestine. It's just bizarre, because people will forget that when showing this picture. That there's a reason that they have security. It's not just like the odd shooter here and there.
Right.
It's that they actually have active problems in their country.
Right. It's a likely chance.
It's not like I'm paying $250,000 a year at this school. It's
Right.
I am paying for security so the students are okay. So I'm gonna read some comments real quick before we start the next part.
Okay.
So I pinned Kale's comment because I will always pin anything that makes me laugh from chat. Dusk wants to be just put in the ground, nothing, no box, no nothing. I kind of want to be put. You know what? I take back what I say. I don't know about you, Alyssa. I want to be put into a coffin, and I want the coffin to be put in like a bar or something. And every once in a while, the coffin just slams open, like Vincent's coffin in Final Fantasy VII, and it makes the loudest possible noise. And then it just plays an audio track of like John saying "fuck off," and then the coffin closes again. And I want worms to be in there, so that eventually it will start playing "Waiting for the Worms to Come" by Pink Floyd, because I really love the album "The Wall." How do you want your body to be preserved or lack thereof?
No, it's kind of the same as Dusk. So like I've ever since they came out with those like you can plant yourself as a tree. Those I think more so though you get what is the word? Your ashes go into the planter and then you plant the tree. But
Yeah.
like I would just I don't want a coffin or anything. I would just like to be put into the ground and then like given back to the earth.
Kale says, I didn't know this, but Kale's is the artist, not me. We could go back to Victorian days and turn our mummies into paint. That, I have to ask, Kale, would you even paint with that? Would you personally use the mummy paint? But yeah, no,
As body paint.
you know what? Yeah, as body paint. You have to use it as body paint. And you have to get, like, full body paint. God, that always reminds me of that BuzzFeed video of the one woman who's like, I have psoriasis and I look ugly. And then like she's pretty attractive actually, but they spend more time on the feel good nature of her putting body paint on herself than the actual idea of her walking. She said, I walked
And
around.
John
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was gonna say in John fashion, he said, "A casket made of solid gold for me, please."
You know what? I promise there'll be solid gold for at least 30 minutes. I don't know how long urine can stay frozen for underground. Kale said, maybe I would, maybe I wouldn't. What's it to you? That's a good question. Plum actually said, I literally might get expelled for saying it's so easy to bring a pew-pew to school. And,
I mean, that's a weird thing to get in trouble for. Yeah, like I know you're not supposed to talk about it, but you weren't threatening to do it.
I brought a knife into school by accident 5 times, and I shit you not, one time my teacher saw that I had a knife in my pocket, and it was my shop teacher for electronics. He walked over to me, and he whispered in my ear, "That's a nice blade you've got there. Can you please put in your backpack so no one else notices it?" Oh, cool. Kale said freshman year of high school, we had a shooting threat. The admin gave us candy if we stayed the full day.
Oh my god.
They should just do vans around the school. It should all be like free candy vans. If you stay for fucking school, we'll give you free candy. Needless to say, I got a full-size Twix bar. At least you know what fucking candy to get. Jesus Christ. Alright, so this next one is not Columbine related. This is Anthony Borges.
Okay.
I've chosen this one. So before I get crucified for going off topic, I'm talking about survivors, and I cannot talk about school incidents without talking directly about Anthony Borges, because this just happened last year. Do you know who Anthony Borges is, Alyssa?
It was only a year ago.
He
was survivor of Parkland, right?
Yeah, it was a year ago that the trial happened. It happened in 2018. So, do you know what his injuries were?
No. I don't know. I don't know anything about him.
He wanted to become a soccer player professionally. He was shot in both legs and the back. And then he used his body to prop open to prop close some doors because he thought he was going to die. And so he used his own body to close doors so that Nicholas couldn't shoot the students behind him.
Oh, wow. Okay.
After being really wounded. And he went to court last year, and he got shot 2 more times. And he was 15 goddamn years old. This 15-year-old said, I'm probably done for, so I'm going to use my own body to protect everyone around me. And he was constantly asked for his story, and he just refused to give it. He refused to talk about it. His lawyers and his parents had to give more of the story. And eventually he did get a little more comfortable, but he doesn't want to become this activist. I'm just going to... What was it?
You said he didn't want to become an activist?
He didn't want to become an activist. So I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I'm just going to read some of it. Borges, then 15, grabbed his phone and dialed his mother and father to no avail. Borges thought he had been shot once, but he actually suffered 5 wounds. His wounds were so devastating, Borges told jurors on Wednesday that he had to undergo extensive medical care. How many surgeries? Broward prosecutors. Oh, that's weird. Broward prosecutors Mike Satz asked. 14, Borges said.
14 surgeries.
14 surgeries. I'm gonna keep scrolling down because I don't remember if it says in this article. One of these articles, it actually explains... Oh, it might not be this one. He actually forgave Nicholas Cruz live.
I feel like I might remember that.
Yeah, he actually forgave Nicholas Cruz. This motherfucker is like the pinnacle of the greatest human being to possibly live. He's just 100% wholesome. And we can only hope to one day be as good or as John as we want to be. As John as we want to be being getting buried in a golden casket. Alright, I'm gonna read one more. Oh, Doug said, I took a knife to school all the time. Well, Doug, you're in a state where I'm sure you could definitely get away with that. And Flim said, would you jump out a 3-story school to survive a school shooting? What do you think, Alyssa?
I don't know. Probably no. No.
Kale said, I think so. You can survive a broken leg or two, but being shot is a lot harder. I actually had in high school, in my last 4 years of schooling, I had about 31 designated spots at which I could hide or direct other people to hide. And I would frequently think of other spots to hide, whether or not I was in trouble or had been hiding from a school shooter. So I would go around the school thinking of these spots.
Yeah, no, Columbine was probably one of the first things that happened to like pave my perspective on things. Because after we had that assembly, you know, we would have it every year. But after the first time, like teachers would that whole day, teachers would be like, okay, if there was a school shooting right now, what would we do? And it would be like the topic of conversation the entire day. It was an exhausting day every year that they did it. But it kind of trained me in any circumstance, like wherever I go, I kind of look at like where the exits are. If something goes down, what would be my plan?
I actually got sent to the principal's office when we had a conversation like that. They said, if there was a school shooting right now, what would you do? And I said, sure as hell wouldn't tell any of you assholes. And they got like bothered by it, and the principal looked at me and said, yeah, actually he has the right idea. But the assistant teacher didn't like my sense of humor. But my whole point is, if there is a school shooting, how do I know that you're not the one committing it? How do I know for a fact that you're not planning something, you know? How do I know that the person next to me won't decide to go Rambo tomorrow. And so my whole theory was, I will tell you when it happens if I know that I can trust you, and I know that you'll fit in my hiding spot. That's fucking it. That's all you get. Did you actually have to answer that question?
What? That, like, what will we do?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
I mean, like, we didn't have to. It was like an open discussion in the class.
Yeah, they actually looked at us and asked each of us what we would do. Like, they asked us our strategy. I'm like, I would not tell you. Why would I tell you? Like, it could be anyone. You can't fucking trust anyone. That's the whole point of it. Like, it could be someone that you think you trust, but then the next day,
You
they have a
know why I
mental break.
think we were sent to the principal's office?
Why?
Because your answer of, I sure as hell wouldn't tell any of you, made it sound like you would be the perpetrator.
You know, that's a fair point. It's like that whole thing. But it's survival of the fittest, you know? You're not going to survive if you're not mentally fit to deal with the situation. And how can you be mentally fit if you know, like, 20 people know where you're going to hide?
Right.
Kale said, I think I was a little too young to remember Columbine, but we always had see something, say something, events, and lockdown drills. Yeah, we had those constantly. I was 4 when Columbine happened. How old were you?
I feel like I was 8.
Oh.
I feel like part the lockdown drills bother me a little bit because, like, I know every scenario is different, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, if you have, like, perpetrators, I'm going to call them that, outside of the school, like, coming into the school, like, yeah, you might want to not send people outside because that would be, like, right in the line of fire. But
Yeah.
if you have, like, a way out, why would you not try to get as many people out as you can?
You know, that's the fun part of it. We can think about it all we want, but we're not going to be able to say anything unless we go through it, sadly.
I know, I just feel like locking everyone down in their classrooms and telling them not to go anywhere is, like, not exactly the way to handle that.
Yeah, I actually worked as a janitor at a school, and I remember thinking to myself, because I worked a night shift, every day I was so thankful that I didn't have to think about, as a school employee, what would happen if there was an active shooter. And I felt miserable at some points, because that was the first thought I had when I got my ID card to go into schools, was I will be safe if there is a school shooting, but the kids won't. The teachers that I see every day as they're going out to their cars and trying to have a good night, they wouldn't be safe. And these teachers are paid shit. The students, they don't want to be there already half the time. And yet I, the person who gets to listen to my headphones at night, I get to be safe. And to me, that just felt weird.
Right.
And that was one of the reasons I hated my job.
I think it's
Anyway.
crazy that we just don't feel safe, like, going to school.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy to think about. And then you have that kid who got arrested for what was the bread sandwich that looked like a gun. We get really overprotective for no reason.
Yeah.
All right.
You know, it's a scary thing. I have 2 kids, so it's
Yeah.
something that I think about often, more often than I would like to admit. You know?
I'll be honest, I think about it even now that I don't have to deal with schools all the time. What would I tell my kids? Because it's like this. I was smart enough to know that there's probably someone in my classroom who's angry enough. And we did figure out who was most likely to cause a school shooting. I was 8th on that list of 28 students. So, but my best friend in class was number 1. And my second best friend was number 2. So I'm like, well, shit. because we kind of did a quiet Facebook vote on graduation, and I was like, should I feel offended? Should I be happy?
At least you know you'll get that text message the night before telling you not to go to school the next day.
Ah, shit. Oh, man. You know what's funny is it was literally Columbine where that happened, too. Like, all of these ridiculous school shooting jokes all stem from this event. It's just...
it's a little wild to me, like, how people are like, I know we weren't going to talk about the two perps, but, like, people talk about them in such a grand way.
Yeah, they see them as gods. They were just people who played video games all day.
Like, they really weren't as smart as everyone thinks they were.
I want to point this out. If they were smart, they would know how to build an explosive. If they would have gone the anarchist cookbook and they would have read it properly and looked at the ingredients a little bit better. But I don't think that they had the anarchist cookbook. Because they were very resourceful kids. They knew how to use computers. They could probably find it online at the time. Hell, they tried to steal from a van because they know it's computer equipment, and they both got arrested for it.
Yeah. And, like, the narrative that was really harshly spun, at least for me, when we talked about Columbine at school, was that bullying is bad because bullying leads to school incidents.
So,
and it was like, it's like you're putting the blame on, like, I don't know. I know we shouldn't bully people.
Well, that you can thank Sue Klebold and a few other people talking about that. But the thing that they always miss is that these were already troubled students.
I know. Like, it wasn't because of bullying. I'm sorry.
It's like the Lords of Chaos. The Lords of Chaos were a group of misfits, and all of them, I think it was like 4 kids. They killed a few people. They killed a teacher, and then they killed people to cover up the teacher's death. But they underestimate, like, how warped a mind can become, and just think, you're developing, you can develop in the wrong direction mentally. Pretty easily. Anyway, Kales, being one of my favorite people ever, as the person who draws most of my goddamn art, said, isn't Columbine also where they started the Rachel's Challenge thing, where they said they killed her for being Christian? That is exactly what you're thinking of. That this is the exact thing that you're thinking of, Gales. In fact, I mentioned it earlier. That's Rachel Scott, her brother Craig Scott. People did actually blame it on religion at one point. In fact,
but now when you listen to a lot of the survivors, it really had nothing to do with anything. It really had nothing to do with race, religion. They were just doing it. They didn't care who, what, where.
Wikipedia actually lists their motive as inconclusive because you can't fucking know.
Right. Even with their journals and stuff like that, there wasn't like a full reason. Other than they hated the popular kids and they hated how, but they hated everybody.
So Go Check Grimgrave pointed something out. They did know the anarchist cookbook that was banned from the internet after that incident, but the original books that formed the cookbook were still available for a while after that. Go Check, I just want to say, you can actually find the anarchist cookbook online if you were an American citizen. Most countries ban it, but because of freedom of speech and freedom of the press, you can actually download it, and the FBI can't put you on a watch list easily, unless they have other reasons, so they have to find other reasons usually to put you on a watch list. But it's readily available in America on the internet, and they could have probably found it. There were a lot of people in the 90s who found it for various purposes for other attacks. And it was readily available, I think, in 2005. I remember there being an attack referenced. Anyway, sorry, I just wanted to throw that out there. Anarchist Cookbook, I watched a documentary on it. Do you know what that is, Alyssa?
I don't actually, so I'm going to have to look it up.
Oh, so, it is... I might get age restricted for mentioning it too much, so I don't really care as much. It's actually a guide on bomb making, LSD manufacturing, and other various illegal goods.
Okay, that's kind of what I assumed when you were mentioning it before, along with
Yeah.
but I wasn't sure.
Yeah, the Anarchist Cookbook is 100% available in America, but stores are allowed to restrict it. So some libraries have it. And
Which is wild.
yeah, it really is. The guy who made it actually says that he regrets making it, but he made it to kind of show how ridiculous freedom of speech was. He did all the research and made it himself. He compiled it. He has a documentary on Netflix, and you can tell that he's like, I should never have made this thing. And it's like, but you did. I'm sorry.
But they're still printing it, so I mean.
Yeah, it's still making money. He's still making money, so.
Right. I'm not that sad about it.
Yeah. I believe he sold the printing rights, though. But I think he still gets a royalty. I could be wrong, but last I checked. But no, yeah, you can find that pretty easily. And what's really disturbing is that not everything in it is violent inherently.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of places, like a lot of news outlets, have used it in the past without mentioning it by name to double check, like, why did this fire happen in this place? Because it does include instructions on how to cook meth and stuff like that. So you can actually find a graphic instruction on how to do every single detail. So you can basically check what some idiot did to the cookbook.
Right.
It's kind of like looking at someone's cake recipe and you're like, I see what happened. You let it get you let the peaks get too foamy, or you let the peaks get too stiff. So now it doesn't work. Your cake is shit. Like when I make a mousse and there's so many moving parts. Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Oh, what were you gonna say?
Flim said, "Where do I get this book?" JK.
Oh God, I'm not gonna do this. I'm not gonna do this. I know exactly where to get this book, and I have always told people it's not worth it because it's a dark road to take. I did research as a teenager, and it's a very dark fucking road to take, and I burned my book since then. Someone gave me a book. But I know the places where you can find it, and you shouldn't go looking for it, because if you do too long, the FBI will find a reason to put you in a watch list, and I cannot take that shit. All you need to know is that it exists, and it gets referenced in a lot of raps, but nobody actually reads the damn thing, and if they do, they're probably reading it to do something from the book. John just said it's on Amazon, and that is 100% correct. You motherfucker.
Well, if it's everywhere, right? You could get it literally anywhere.
No,
Barnes and Noble.
Barnes and Noble probably banned it. You can literally get this. It's. Thank you, John, for being the more. Actually, John, I'm gonna tell you what. No, it's not filled with bullshit. It is not filled with, like, I can 100% tell you. But there are, I should probably mention this too. There are impersonation versions of it that aren't real. What's it called? There are replicas. No, counterfeits, that's the word. There are counterfeits. There are several people who've made it since then. You want to find the one by the... Oh God, I'm going to get restricted. You want to find the one by the original author.
Let's just move on.
God. Sorry, I'm criticizing someone for the technique that they could have learned from a book, that's all. I do the research, that's all I'm fucking saying. Before we start this, I just want to point out that it has 798,000 views on YouTube. It honestly should have so many more. I'm kind of disappointed that people don't click on this, but it's also because it's on TEDx Talks rather than TED Talks, so it's their secondary channel. This is actually a great video because unlike the Casey one, I won't have to explain anything. But like the Casey one, it fits perfectly into a nice slot. Let me know if you want to pause, okay?
Okay.
Do you remember where you were on June 12th, 2016? A few of you might, but I'm betting the vast majority probably don't. On June 12th, 2016, a lone gunman walked into...
Oh yeah, I should point out this video came out before the Parkland shooting.
Okay.
I'm gonna go to the bathroom real quick, but I've listened to this video about 20 times, so I'll be right back.
Pulse nightclub, killing 46 people in the deadliest mass shooting by a single gunman in U.S. history. Now let's go back about a decade. How about August 29th, 2005? Do you remember where you were? We got a few heads nodding out there. That was Hurricane Katrina. Over 1,800 dead in the costliest natural disaster ever to hit the North American continent. Now let's go back another few years and go for 100% recognition. Do you remember where you were on September 11th, 2001? Everybody's head nodding now. The September 11th attacks left over 3,000 dead in the worst terrorist attack in U.S. history. Do you remember how you felt? Were you confused, afraid? Did you feel sick? Were you vulnerable? Every time this happens, we're becoming more and more desensitized. We frequently see news coverage of mass shootings, natural disasters that result in enormous loss of life, terrorist attacks, and then we change the channel to watch something more friendly. This is the society that we live in today, but the impact of these traumatic events are no less serious on those who are directly affected. And now the impact of emotional pain on our society is more problematic than ever. Do you remember where you were on April 20th, 1999?
So, we're listed as entertainment, and I feel obligated, because we're listed as entertainment, that I have to make the joke that I used to make in high school. Okay, are you ready? Alyssa?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Alyssa, do
Yeah.
you think that there were any students high on 420 at the Columbine High School?
Do I think what?
That there were any students that were high as balls and thought they were bad tripping?
Oh, I'm sure. Maybe.
You gotta ask
don't know.
yourself, especially since we're talking about the addiction video, you gotta ask yourself how many people thought that they were tripping, having a bad trip, and tried to go home early or tried to run away in the wrong direction. It's 420. Most kids smoke pot all the time when it comes to 420. At least most that I met when I was in high school. I didn't.
Yeah, but did that come before or after this?
Oh, that's been a thing for a long time. That's been since the 70s.
I know it has, but I feel like it's more prevalent since, because it was like something they picked that day up for a reason.
Yeah, it was believed that it was a specific line in legal code, but it isn't. It's just a weird day that got picked by accident, and they've always come up with different ideas. My dad was in high school in the late 70s, early 80s, and he would get he would smoke right on that day every year without
Oh,
fail.
okay. All right, yeah. So I'm sure there were quite a few people stoned out of their minds that day.
It's also worth noting that Hitler was born on 420.
Yeah. Yep.
So when you smoke the devil's grass on that day, you were celebrating two tragedies at one time. Smoke it up when you think about it.
Two students walked into Columbine High School armed with shotguns, semi-automatic rifles, and a bevy of homemade explosives, killing 12 students and a teacher in what was at the time the worst high school shooting in U.S. history. I remember where I was. I had just walked into the library with my best friend in order to meet others preparing to go to lunch. Moments later, a teacher ran through the same doors we just entered, yelling for everybody to get under the tables, that somebody had a gun. I remember how I felt. I was confused. I was afraid. I felt sick. And I was vulnerable. And just minutes later, I was playing dead underneath a table next to a pool of blood. I had just been shot, and I'd witnessed my best friend murdered right in front of me as we were huddled together waiting for help to come. I was broken. I was in shock. And I was in pain. But my understanding of pain that day was nothing like my understanding of pain today. What's the first thing you think of when you think of pain? Is it a broken arm, headache, sprained ankle, maybe a gunshot wound? Those are the things that I used to associate with pain, and they're pretty in line with the medical definition of pain. A variably unpleasant sensation associated with actual or potential tissue damage and mediated by specific nerve fibers to the brain, where its conscious appreciation may be modified by various factors. Do you notice anything missing from that definition? Do you see any mention of the emotional components of pain? Me either. In 1996, the American Pain Society introduced the phrase, pain is a fifth vital sign, meaning that when you walked into an emergency room, the initial assessment of your condition was based on 5 data points: pulse rate, temperature, respiration rate, blood pressure, and pain. This was brought about by a cultural movement that was adamant that we were undertreating pain, and patient satisfaction surveys were put in place in order to track the outcome and effectiveness of this new implementation. And what better way to promote these new policies than to tie physician and hospital compensation to patient satisfaction? A recent survey by the industry group Physicians Practice reports that 3 out of 10 doctors are paid bonuses based upon patient satisfaction surveys, and hospitals with better scores receive bigger payments from insurers. So naturally, administrators and physicians began to support this new movement, with the goal being to get everyone's pain to 0 on the scale. That was the mark. The ethical dilemma immediately became, do I issue this person narcotics in order to keep them happy, or deny them and potentially hurt my compensation, the revenue of the hospital, or at worst, open myself up to a grievance for undertreating pain that could potentially result in the loss of my job? I have experience with pain. Less than an hour after scrambling out the back door of the Columbine High School library, I was medicated on a variety of substances that were intended to sedate and to relieve pain. I was 17 years old, and I'd never drank a beer or smoked weed, much less anything harder. I had no idea of what these medications were even supposed to do. All I knew at age 17 was that a lot of highly educated people had prescribed me medications that were intended to make me feel better, and they were working.
So far, how do you feel about all of this?
I don't know. I'm kind of waiting to see where he's going with it.
GoTrick actually said that he's dealing with pain numbers right now. I'm going to offer an invitation to GoTrick if he wants to jump on to talk about pain numbers. I hope you're okay with that.
Me? Yeah. I
Yeah.
don't care. The more the merrier.
This would just be a quick thing. I always like to try and invite people who know a little bit more on. I'll continue. But I want to point out that what he's talking about, my significant other has to deal with every single day. And the husband fucking hates dealing with all of this every single day. Because no matter what you might say, it's always going to come down to, but does it work to alleviate their pain?
It's always going to come down to what?
Does it work to alleviate their pain?
Oh.
It's not going to be, is it ethical? Is it moral? Is it the right thing to do? It's, does it alleviate the pain in the short term?
Right.
GoTrek said, I can. GoTrek, I'm going to continue this, but if you want to, I'd love for you to come on and explain pain numbers right after this TED Talk is done, after we get through talking with our stuff.
only not in the fashion that they were intended. Now, if you only remember one thing from my talk today, let it be this. Opioids are profoundly more effective at relieving the symptoms of emotional pain than they are at relieving the symptoms of physical pain. I often think back to my pain that day, and if I were to rate it on the pain scale, my physical pain would have been a 3 or a 4, and that was likely the response I offered when I was asked. But my emotional pain was an absolute 10. I was in agony beyond comprehension, but that was never asked. It was never talked about. Acute physical pain ends relatively quick. Complex emotional pain does not. My physical pain had subsided in just a matter of days, but my emotional pain was just as debilitating as it was lying in the hospital bed that day. So I continued taking the medication that was prescribed for my pain. I was addicted before I even knew what was happening. A recent survey by the American Society of Addiction Medicine reports that 86% of heroin users began by taking prescription opioids. And in 2012 alone, over 259 million opioid prescriptions were filled in the US. That is more than enough to give every American adult their own bottle of pills. I very quickly began drug seeking in order to soothe my emotional pain. And it was only a matter of months before the prescriptions had turned to alcohol, marijuana, and illicit narcotics. And as addiction always does over the course of the next decade, my tolerance continued to build, my life continued to be unmanageable, and my emotional pain stayed unresolved. It was like I had pressed a pause button on my emotional growth. I was managing my pain in the only way I knew how. And I wasn't alone. I believe that emotional pain is what's driving the addiction epidemic. Think of someone you know who struggles with addiction. I'm betting you can point to an element of unaddressed or unresolved emotional pain in that person. Now think of a time you were in intense emotional pain and how desperate you were to stop it. What if you had been offered an immediate route to feeling better? Imagine for a moment breaking your leg in an avalanche. Now that injury alone can be a fairly traumatic experience, but it's manageable. With short-term pain management, most would make a full recovery. But now imagine sustaining that exact same injury, only this time your close friend was skiing next to you and they didn't make it out of the avalanche alive. It seems so crystal clear to me that there would be two very different pain management strategies for what would appear to be an identical physiological injury. Only there's not. Emotional pain is toxic, it's pervasive, and society has programmed us to avoid it. We medicate with alcohol and drugs, sex and pornography, even television and technology. And oftentimes, we're doing this without even knowing it. Our society is literally being defined by this pain. And now more and more people are dying every month because they're looking for solace in the only way they know how. It's the way they were programmed.
All right, so real quick, Alyssa.
Yeah.
I'll restart the call real quick, okay?
Mm-hmm.
We're having some technical issues. Okay. Okay. I restarted the call. Let me just restream. It could just be because I'm using so much upload speed for so many things.
Yeah, it's possible.
If that's the problem, I'll just pay for more next time. I think it's just because it was tabbing out. Sorry about that.
It's fine.
John in chat said, "Fuck, I hate this guy. I wish this guy didn't make it out." And
Okay, that's excessive.
Gotrek said he left out how religion is a big outlet for the painfully weakened. And Flim said, "I had a best friend who died in a house fire in elementary, trying to save his grandma, who he lived with, who also died."
Everyone has pain. It's unavoidable.
Did you hear that?
Yeah.
I'm going to rewind that.
Everyone has pain. It's unavoidable. And I have a simple summary for how we got here. We built a society that is filled with emotional pain and trauma. We combine that with a healthcare system that's intended primarily to treat physiological symptoms, and then we put Big Pharma in the driver's seat. aimed directly at profits with regulations that are easy to manipulate. And now we're in the midst of what the former Surgeon General called the worst public health crisis the nation has ever seen 2 years ago. It has since worsened, and what was then the addiction epidemic is now commonly referred to as the addiction pandemic. And here's a glimpse of where we're at today. The New York Times reported last month that overdose deaths rose by 19% in 2016.
Kales mentioned, I feel like he's not discussing the big push forward and get into therapy and learn positive coping mechanisms. Emotional pain does not equal drug addiction every time. I want to point out that a lot of that, though, Kales, is thanks to him. Austin was essentially patient zero for a lot of the therapy talk. And Gotrick said, indoctrination is an alternate addiction that leeches upon the emotionally traumatized. Plum responded, this is racism.
An alternate.
I hate Plum's puns.
And preliminary data for 2017 shows that this trend is only worsening. We've now far surpassed the worst years ever recorded for deaths caused by guns, AIDS, and automobile accidents. This data is appalling to me. There are people in our society today who will still write this off under the guise of, they're just a bunch of junkies. Well, I'm here to tell you, they're not. They're fathers, mothers, brothers, sisters, they're children, sometimes not even in their teens. They're people just like you and me, trying to cope in the only way they know how. And they're dying by the thousands every single month at an ever-increasing rate. Addiction is the only disease where we commonly wait until it's at the highest levels of acuity before we try to do something about it. And by then, it's often too late. We have to start sooner. We have to practice early interventions. We have to educate youth with real-world methods. We have to stop thinking that people can be rehabilitated in 30 days. And then we have to improve accessibility to long-term treatment. We have to eliminate the stigma associated with addiction. And most importantly, we have to reform a broken healthcare system that is slowly coming to terms with the fact that they're responsible for this pandemic. It took me over a decade of active addiction and many more in recovery before I finally learned the difference between feeling better and actually being better. Because I had to learn to lean into the pain. I had to quit looking for the fast road to relief. I had to do the emotional work that needed to be done no matter how much it hurt. And after multiple attempts at short-term treatment, I finally found a willingness to do whatever it took. And I stayed in the continuum of care for 14 consecutive months in order to figure it out. I had to go through the stages of grief that I should have been going through at age 17, at age 29. But I refused to keep running. And it worked. Fortunately for us, there is such a thing as post-traumatic growth, and you're witnessing that on the stage before you today. Post-traumatic growth is defined as the positive psychological change that can occur in a person after they've experienced a traumatic life event.
Hey, Alyssa.
Yeah.
Can you see if Austin Eubanks has done anything since this?
Sure. I do have to say that I agree with the things that he is saying, but I also don't really like him. And I don't know why.
Yeah, just do a Google search of him and see if you can find anything.
When was this put out?
2017, I think? 2017. July 26, 2017. A few days before my birthday.
Oh, okay. Well, he's dead.
How'd he die?
You knew this already and you made me look it up.
Yep.
He died of a heroin overdose.
Yup. Does it say anything else?
It says Columbine incident survivor Austin Eubanks died of a heroin overdose of acute heroin toxicity. Who was found dead last month during a welfare check after he didn't answer his phone. He was 37.
Almost made 38.
Yes, it had been ruled an accidental heroin overdose.
Just a few days after he gave a lecture on addiction.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Some of them will, some of the articles would report that, I think it was about 2 weeks after he had given a lecture, and he had said he was struggling.
Yeah. It doesn't say that in this one, surprisingly.
Yeah, there were like a lot of these articles that came out right after.
Oh, it says from his Twitter account, it appears he last spoke at the 2019 Connecticut Opioid and Prescription Drug Prevention Conference on May 2nd. And this was reported June 13th. Yeah, so about a month.
Yeah, so not very long before.
No.
He sadly could not deal with the pain for too long.
Implies that by finding a way to endure through significant suffering, you can actually have meaningful development of personal character and elevate yourself to a higher level of functioning. But achieving post-traumatic growth requires that you lean into the pain. You can't run from it. You can't medicate it. So now I have a challenge for you. Take an audit of your current level of emotional pain. Do you have grief or heartache that you aren't dealing with? Has something traumatic happened to you that you haven't healed from? If so, take a step towards addressing this pain.
So Kale said you can be open and try to destigmatize drug recovery, but you can't set yourself up as an example to follow exactly if you're struggling that bad. I want to point out the reason why I had Alyssa Google that is because drug addiction is forever. You can relapse anytime. No matter how steadfast you are, no matter how strong-willed you are. 2 years, well, less than 2 years after this TED Talk, where he had to go there and bear it all, and he had to talk about his pain. He had to talk about how he felt and how he feels. He's not a hypocrite. He just was fighting a losing battle that he knew was a losing battle. And that's why you can hear him. You can hear the tremors in his voice a lot throughout this TED Talk. To him, it's a losing battle. He's not trying to win. He's trying to prevent future people from having to fight this battle. And his goal isn't necessarily to survive. It's to be patient zero. It's really horrific. Kale said, you can, but it makes drug recovery look impossible if the person they look up to can't even do it. It seems like it re-victimizes people and the horrible stuff they've gone through. And Gotrek said, like a pickle that can no longer become a cucumber. This story is horrific only because for a while he was doing a good job. When this came out, I actually watched it the day it came out. It was a few days before my birthday. And I watched it the day it came out, and I was keeping up with him day to day. And he was just going and fighting these little wars with himself, and you could tell with his speeches. And if you look Austin Eubanks up, every single time he did an interview, you could tell that there was something that was bothering him between 2017, like late December or so, to 2019. Before then, it was just a steadfast, strong-willed man talking about his addiction that he had to face directly. So I wouldn't fault him if I were you. Anyone can fall down this rabbit hole, and anyone can suffer as much as he did. And anyone can sadly destroy their own lives the way that he did. kills them, so it seems like a last-ditch effort to help other people because he couldn't save himself. I don't know. I think that by that point, he'd already been giving speeches and lectures on it, and he had to just keep going. But I'll never know. The problem is that Austin had a best friend who passed away from his injuries at the incident. So I'll never really know. Alyssa?
Yeah.
Do you have anything to add?
No, I also don't think it's 100% his fault. Like, he went through something traumatic. His body needed the pain medication when he started it. This is not somebody who went out and said, I want to try drugs. This wasn't like a choice. He didn't make the choice to start these medications.
I think he would have never done it if he didn't have to.
Right. And so I do feel a little bit differently about it in that sense. Not that addiction is addiction and it sucks either way. That's not what I'm saying. But, he didn't really even have he didn't even have that choice. Like he was put on these medications as a kid and then had to learn how to cope without them when they had been his crutch for however long. So, I mean, I don't know. I definitely wouldn't say, I wouldn't pin it as his fault.
I think Austin Eubanks sadly knew that he was a dead man walking at that point.
Oh, I'm sure.
I think Austin Eubanks knew that he had to be the example and that he wasn't going to make it that long without going back to his addiction. Because you can tell from the way he describes it, he was very enticed by it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very depressing to think about how no matter how hard you fight against it, and this is just a reminder, if you have someone in your life who's addicted to something, talk to them. Like, seriously. I don't fucking know how to tell you this. Don't just shut them out. Just fucking talk to them. Because you never know, no matter how much bravado you give something, they could really be struggling. And it's fucked up. Are you ready to finish these last minute and a half?
Yeah.
Call a friend. Talk to a therapist. Just speak your truth to a stranger. Take one small step to shed light on this darkness. Because I've seen what darkness can do. I've seen it in hospital rooms when just one more didn't end up the way it was intended. I've seen it in jails with people who were born addicted and never had a chance to learn anything else. I've seen it at funerals for children who died before they ever had a chance to truly live. And I've seen it from underneath a table in the library of my high school. I want to leave you all with something that I wish I had known at age 17. Whoever you are, whatever you're going through, in whatever way you might be going through it, just know this. In order to heal it, you have to feel it. We're not going to solve the addiction pandemic overnight, but we will make progress when people start to understand the difference between physical and emotional pain and then choose to do something about it. In recovery, we often say, you keep what you have by giving it away. Find the courage to lean into the pain, and you can be a force in helping others. Thank you.
All right. Are you ready to, do you have anything you want to add before I ask GoTrek if he wants to add to this?
What'd you say?
Do you have anything to add before I add GoTrek to this? real quick?
Yeah, I just want to say really quick, like when we were talking about his struggle with addiction, imagine being him and like having that internal struggle and then having to be the face of something where you're telling other people that they can get through it, and the amount of pressure that is on you to fight your own demons.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure that added to his addiction. Like the stress of him having to be the face of, like, you know, the strong one.
Well, think about it. His best friend was murdered in front of him. Straight up murdered in front of him. And there wasn't anything that he could do about it. And then he tried to, like, the survivor skills alone must have fucking killed him.
Yeah.
Then to add everything else. Oh yeah, this one's an interesting TED Talk too, if anyone ever wants to watch a good TED Talk. It was, I was almost a school shooter. I don't know how much I like this guy's story, but it's kind of a good point of just treat people as humans and they'll remember that they're human. Remind people of their humanity constantly. And that's kind of a theme that we'll be dealing with all night. Alright, I'm gonna put Gotrek on.
Okay.
So I'm gonna just add him to the call, and then I'm going to ask him to leave when it's time.
Okay.
So let me real quick do that. Now, after this, I'm going to have to feed my cats. Is this gonna work? Oh, adverts at the end. Hold on. Let me just try this. Wow, I'm booming it up here. Okay. Can you say something?
Something. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Awesome.
Alright, can you give your take on pain numbers?
So, like the pain numbers and the pain number like scale, it's constantly pushed on asking you like what's your pain level and stuff like that. And similar to what he said on those payouts are based on how successful and how much you dropped those numbers and stuff like that. There's like a percentage cutoff where you can't get the help you might need, even if that's what your doctor thinks you need, if that number didn't drop enough as an incentive for the insurance companies to pay it. So you have to constantly estimate, like, what is your pain at? What pain has it been reduced to? And if that lines up with their plan of how much progress you're making before that course of action is denied. And that was part of like that incentive that the doctors had, maybe not always like, I'm going to get them hooked on narcotics and things like that, but it helped to bring all that pain scale numbers down so that they could continue to be treating their patients.
It's the easy road rather than the right road.
Right. Because it does have that influence of money, even though it's not like, pushed on as aggressively toward like a drug deal type scenario,
Yeah.
Which is kind of like it's commonly looked at, and there's kind of like a skeptical view of like, how is that even possible? How are these doctors able to do this? But it does have this formula that comes down to money in the form of insurance paying for everything. And like they said, those incentives, because it could be like, well, the patient can't pay for it at all, and it doesn't meet 25% increase in pain reduction, so we're denying it. What does anybody do? Now the doctor doesn't get paid, the patient doesn't get helped because they can't afford to pay it without the insurance.
In the end,
you know what I mean?
The only person who suffers is the patient.
Right, who then, if they've already been started on the pain medications, now has to look to an alternative, which in the case of opioids turns to heroin.
Yep.
And that's kind of like that path of playing the numbers until the patient ends up in rehab, because they didn't have things that addressed what actually needed to help that person for the emotional pain, like he was describing at the beginning.
Pray tell, does the rehab get covered under most insurances?
It's usually not like higher end types do.
So they screw you
But-
over and they don't even apologize.
Kinda. But policies have changed, so I don't know what like the current coverages for something like that are.
Whatever
But-
it is, it's not enough.
Right, it's typically not like 100%, especially
American health
which is
insurance.
it depends on who you got, But
I think normally
that's-
it's like
that's
a shorter stay. Like they will cover it, but it'll be like
2 weeks instead of the 4, stuff like
right.
that. They do
And
cut
even
those
sometimes
kind of
that's
deals
not
too.
enough.
Right. And like you said, it's something that's lifelong. Like that addiction, the person is now going to have to deal with that problem. And that's where they push it onto, and this might be a little sidetracked from just the numbers, but that's where they push it on to the 12-step program, which is religiously influenced. Even though I don't try to knock it or AA and all that. But if you watch Penn and Teller's bullshit, they explain the full story that is the mind funk of the 12-step program.
Do you mind if I take the floor on this one real quick?
Go for it.
The 12-step program, if anyone out there ever reads the 12-step program, what Gotrek is talking about is that halfway through the 12-step program, you actually give up drugs and instead turn to God. And if you don't turn to God, then you cannot pass the 12-step program. It's literally in the 12 steps, and you have to give your life up to God.
You have to surrender.
You have to literally surrender all that you are to God and worship the Lord, your Savior.
And in order to get people to do it in a way that goes around, the like religious persecutions of it, they open it up to saying that you can say whatever you want, but it's still an action of doing it. And the only people who get like really stood up against the wall are the ones who are like, well, I don't believe in any of that, and you're forcing me to say it for anything. But that's not that directly goes against my beliefs. But that number of people who get it put in that situation is such a minority in comparison to the numbers that even the government, which is supposed to be church and state different, rolls with it to where that's like the thing you have to do if you get a DUI or, all the other things where they send you to a rehab facility or like AA meetings afterward. It's forced. And the people who are being forced to go into it are in a mental state that is impressionable by the repetitious substitution of the 12-step program.
The 12-step program also has a low quality, mainly because people who are irreligious typically will put their whole drug recovery on the burden of being religious. And thus, as soon as they feel irreligious, they start using again. So it doesn't help. They're putting all of the weight onto something totally different. If that thing has a strong foundation, it's fine. If you already believe in God, it's fine. If you don't, then you're fucked. Because eventually, there might be a passing in your life, or someone might sadly go through a traumatic accident, and then all of a sudden your belief in God, right out the fucking window. Just gone. Because you believed all of it, only because you were addicted and you needed to better yourself. You need to become better. And in doing so, it's all gone. You're done. You're not better. You're worse. You're left more broken because the one thing you believed is gone. Sorry, go ahead, go.
Well, it also it's substitution for the addiction, not handling the problem of whatever is going on in that person's life that led them to the addiction.
Oh, dude, everything we know about drugs is substitution. It's really sad.
Right. And that's why the 12-step program is what they offer for any addiction, whether it be gambling, sex addiction, chemical dependency, alcohol, which is still a chemical dependency, where they say they can like cure any addiction and you can be addicted to anything. It just comes back to, well, if you start feeling urges, you need to go to an AA meeting. You need to go to a Narcotics Anonymous meeting, or, overeaters, or whatever it is, because it's an interruption of the habit of falling back into that relapse.
I don't
and that's
rap
where they,
for Jesus. I fuck for Jesus. Just saying.
Relapse is like the 13th step of the 12-step program that leads you back to number 1 or 2.
Wait.
You know what I mean? And that's just a way of continuous coping until you die.
Isn't the 13th step fucking another person who's also going through the program?
No.
Ah.
No, that can confirm that is not.
Okay, I just always assumed that was what it was. I'm not kidding. I always assumed it was having a sexual relationship with someone else who's addicted, who's also trying to recover. And then twisting and warping the... Okay.
No, that's just like a common 15th or 16th step, which is a repeated 13th step after failing third or fourth time through.
Okay, that makes sense.
But it still counts as a 13th step, which is where that confusion comes in.
That makes sense. The 13th step is relapse.
Oh, right. You got to have 3 exponents on top of that.
Look, at least the whole time I was thinking about the 13th step, and I'm like, that's when you fuck another person in the fucking program. But nah, apparently not. Do you have anything else to add, buddy?
No, that's it.
Alright. You have a good one. I'm going to go on to a music break. I'm going to feed the cats. They're really, really hungry. So. That's not the cats, it's Go Trek, I promise. Alright, I'm gonna call you John Breaks Bad News. And I'm going to mute my mic on the Yeti. And I'll play music, and if the music ends, just do me a solid and just keep running it for me while I'm feeding the cats, okay? Just keep talking for me.
Wait, just keep what?
I'll start the music break.
Yeah.
If I'm not back when the music is done, just talk.
Oh, God. Okay.
I believe in you. You got this. Go Trek. Right. I fucking love and hate you. So I guess it's the 13th and 14th and 15th and 17th steps.
All right. You have about 2.5 minutes before that song ends, so go.
Bye.
Do you know what song I'm playing?
No.
You said 2.5 minutes before that song ends, so I was wondering if you knew what song I was playing.
Oh. No, I just made it up.
Oh, okay, cool. Let me real quick just grab a song. I'll put 2 on, okay?
Okay.
That way you don't have to worry about as much.
Thanks.
So, how's your day going?
Pretty good. They're saying they can't hear the song.
Well, that's because I'm not fucking playing it yet, John.
Oh.
Oh, Kale's also asked how we all doing. God, what else do I want to put on? I know exactly what I'm going to put on, by the way.
I figured you did.
Oh, yeah, I have to put on my favorite band. 100%. I'm probably eventually going to learn that, like, I get in trouble for something along with this, but, you know. So, I'm going to put on Bad Astronaut, and I'm going to put on 2 of my favorite songs. I'm going to go. I'll be right back.
All right.
In the ashes of our greatest year, I forced the pawn wish I could. No, that's not it. See what I mean to say is this: in this mad world, it's hard to see the imperfection in your smile, and it's hard to be true to you.
All right, so it's in chat. Alyssa, you asked me where my tattoo was. I'm going to say it was my ass.
I knew it.
No, yeah, sorry, I forgot to share the screen with you so you can hear the music.
Yeah, it's okay. I just listened to it on my phone.
I figured that'd be the case. Yeah, no, I was kind of in the
Made
middle
it back in record
yeah.
time.
Well, I had to feed the fucking cats, otherwise they yell at me. They'd be like, "What the fuck? Where's the food?" Yeah, that's my favorite band, actually. Like, unironically.
It's pretty good. Actually enjoyed it.
There's 2 bad songs by them, and that's saying something. They have 3 albums, and really, it was 2 members of Lagwagon. 1 member left, and then the other member said, "Let's make a band so that you'll make music with me still. I like making music with you. It'd be pretty cool." And he's like, "Yeah, sure, I guess." And then sadly, the guy who left Lagwagon was like, "Yeah, I just don't feel it, man." And killed himself.
That sucks.
So I'm gonna kind of gloss through this, kind of like the other article, but it's Parkland, and the Parkland people, 2018, I believe it happened. Yeah, 2018. So throughout this article, it's only 17. Jesus Christ! See, this does annoy me a little bit. So it says 13, but oh wait, no, yeah, it was
They're
it
combining
was
the
15. Yeah, they should count the 2. It's 2 more deaths. They were the
yes,
ones.
I understand, but they aren't counting the 2 perps.
Look, all I'm saying is, if you ask me what your body count is, if you ask me what my body count is, I'm going to count my masturbation as my body count, okay? Because that was me with me. Just saying.
That doesn't count.
That was a reference to the last stream, if anyone was there. I had to make a dark reference, though, because it is pretty fucked up already. Non-microwavable immediately got the reference because I immediately made the tapping noises. They counted. I made those noises 12 times during the Doki Doki Literature Club, and we had this poor girl constantly counting every single time I made those noises, and it was a fun day. You know, I love peanut butter, and you guys are all like heretics. Just saying. All right,
It's weird because I ate peanut butter yesterday, but I don't really like it.
I really just want to show you that there are an abundant amount of articles like this. I don't really need to read this to you.
Okay.
So that you would know, like, these exist. The Columbine students came out and were speaking their stories. Cameras are constantly pushed in their faces, too. It's crunchy, by the way, not microwavable. Crunchy. Anyone who doesn't say crunchy is a fucking liar or a heretic. Okay, anyway.
No, I don't like crunchy. I especially don't like crunchy.
See, a liar and a heretic. We got it. Anyway, no, every time these events happen, a camera is pushed in the Columbine survivors' faces and they're asked, "How do you feel?"
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah. So, if you scroll...
But they didn't ask for any of this.
No. There's also the daughter of the 3rd victim. And at some point, it's like, Dad would be so proud. There's also the daughter of the 3rd victim who was shot, and then they tried to do abrupt surgery on him for a few hours before he sadly passed away.
Mm. And this is of the Columbine.
Yeah. We have one more article. Not one more article, one more video.
Which I feel like is the one that's going to make me the most mad.
Yeah, that's the point. So, you know how Casey got to have her nice life with her daughter?
Mm-hmm.
Well, her children, her 4, but she mentioned her daughter in particular. And you know how Austin didn't get to have his nice life because sadly he relapsed?
Yes.
I gotta search this.
I think when you asked me if I knew any of these people, this was the one name that I remembered. And not because
Remember
I
how I
love her.
showed you the view count on Austin's? It was 798,000.
Mm-hmm.
This is the Wikipedia page. And Klebold was born in Columbus, Ohio, and worked in assistance services for the disabled for many years. She is now involved in suicide prevention care for people with psychiatric disorders. I literally grabbed you onto this particular thing because
Yeah.
you would have a personal connection with this woman
Yes.
in the worst possible way.
Mm-hmm.
So you would be the one person who'd be allowed to judge. So if you go on most things involving Sue Klebold, you will get an overwhelmingly large amount of comments saying you didn't deserve to be treated the way that you were. Now, the last thing I want to do is point that she wrote a book. There you go.
I mean, I do agree that because I the parents dealt with a lot, and it's not their fault necessarily. So no, I believe that she deserved to be treated terribly. But you know, like I also don't agree with her though, and her stances on a lot of things.
So, shortly after the court hearing for the Van break-in, Harris reverted his website back to just hosting user-created levels of Doom. He began to write his thoughts down in a journal instead. In both their journals, Harris and Klebold would later plot the attack. Soon after beginning his journal, Harris typed out one plan of attack, which included possibly escaping to a foreign country after the massacre. Mexico, by the way, which they don't know Spanish at all. Or hijacking an aircraft at Denver International Airport and crashing it into New York City.
And causing it to crash. What did you say?
Causing it to crash.
Oh, okay.
So I want to point this out real quick. Harris were so they had broken into a van. That's all I want people to know is that they broke into a van, and that Harris and Klebold. It says Harris wrote a letter of apology to the owner of the van he and Klebold broke into earlier that year. Around the same time, he denied the owner of the van in his journal, stating he believed he had the right to steal something if he wanted. This is Harris writing this, I want to point out. By far the most prevalent theme in Klebold's journals is his wish for suicide and private despair at his lack of success with women, which he refers to as an infinite sadness. Klebold had repeatedly documented his desires to kill himself, but his final remark in the basement tapes, shortly before the attack, is a resigned statement made as he glances away from the camera. Just know I'm going to a better place. I didn't like life too much. So you're going to see the following content. Oh, hold on. Oh, Kale said, I don't know why I thought we were discussing antitoxins. Kind of crunchy. I don't know, Kales. That's you, man. Alright, so the following content will contain suicide or self-harm topics. Now, remember how I showed you the previous videos? They were like less than 20k for any of Casey's, and they were 798k for Austin's.
Yes.
11 million, and the comments are turned off.
Wow.
And
Okay.
if you search Sue Klebold, they're always going to be higher in number, on average, than any of the things that Austin or Casey put out. They're even going to be bigger than Craig Scott talking about his sister. And Craig Scott's sister was directly involved in inspiring the Rachel Challenge. So just to give you an idea, this woman is given a lot more speaking room than anyone else. Are you ready?
Yep.
The last
Oh yeah, before we start, Sue wrote letters to every family who had lost someone in the shooting. It is not confirmed whether or not she wrote
letter.
Letters. Individual letters to every single family who'd lost someone. This speech also comes right after her divorce. Like a few years, she had divorced her husband in 2014. And right after the shooting, she had written letters to every single person who had lost someone in the shooting. She had written some letters to everyone who had been injured. But the question is always asked, did the parents know that there was anything up? And I want to remind you of the van that they broke into, because it's not the only case.
time I heard my son's voice was when he walked out the front door on his way to school. He called out one word in the darkness, "Bye." It was April 20th, 1999. Later that morning at Columbine High School, my son Dylan and his friend Eric killed 12 students and a teacher and wounded more than 20 others before taking their own lives. 13 innocent people were killed, leaving their loved ones in a state of grief and trauma. Others sustained injuries, some resulting in disfigurement and permanent disability. But the enormity of the tragedy can't be measured only by the number of deaths and injuries that took place. There's no way to quantify the psychological damage of those who were in the school or who took part in rescue or cleanup efforts. There's no way to assess the magnitude of a tragedy like Columbine, especially when it can be a blueprint for other shooters who go on to commit atrocities of their own. Columbine was a tidal wave, and when the crash ended, it would take years for the community and for society to comprehend its impact. It has taken me years to try to accept my son's legacy. The cruel behavior that defined the end of his life showed me that he was a completely different person from the one I knew. Afterwards, people asked, "How could you not know?"
I want to point out, and I think you'll agree with me on this one, Alyssa. Is it just me, or does she ring with the energy of that that friend's mom that you try and avoid because she wants to seem cool and hip and know everything, but they're just invasive as all hell, and they stand there and they get in the way?
Yep.
I've at times theories that maybe that's why, and I don't want to like give him any credit, but that's why Dylan didn't have a girlfriend. Was that he didn't know how to like talk with women because he's used to only his invasive mother. Because he had one brother, as far as I know. I don't think he had a sister, so.
No, I don't think so.
She just has that I want to be the cool mom energy about her.
What kind of a mother were you? I still ask myself those same questions. Before the shootings, I thought of myself as a good mom, helping my children become caring, healthy, responsible adults was the most important role in my life. But the tragedy convinced me that I failed as a parent, and it's partially this sense of failure that brings me here today. Aside from his father, I was the one person who knew and loved Dylan the most. If anyone could have known what was happening, it should have been me, right? But I didn't know. Today I'm here to share the experience of what it's like to be the mother of someone who kills and hurts. For years after the tragedy, I combed through memories, trying to figure out exactly where I failed as a parent. But there are no simple answers. I can't give you any solutions. All I can do is share what I have learned. When I talk to people who didn't know me before the shootings, I have 3 challenges to meet. First, when I walk into a room like this, I never know if someone there has experienced loss because of what my son did. I feel a need to acknowledge the suffering caused by a member of my family who wasn't here to do it for himself. So first, with all of my heart, I'm sorry if my son has caused you pain. The second challenge I have is that I must ask for understanding and even compassion when I talk about my son's death as a suicide. 2 years before he died, he wrote on a piece of paper in a notebook that he was cutting himself. He said that he was in agony and wanted to get a gun so he could end his life.
I do want to point out that in his journals that were released, both of those are real things, in case anyone ever happens upon this and wonders, is that true? Yeah. He had talked about it.
Yeah.
There are people who always called bullshit. So I saw this when it came out because I was keeping track of things after the Austin Eubanks one, which happened shortly after this one, and they still had the comments turned on for a bit. So during the Austin Eubanks one, I came here and it was just people criticizing her for anything that they could. Oh, a Google user asked, just curious what her occupation was that involved speaking or public interaction before this. Alyssa, can you describe her occupation for me?
So she works with, or assists people with developmental disabilities. So, it would be like caretaking for people who are disabled and can't take care of themselves.
So what she basically did, to explain what you were asking, was anyone who had a disability under her care, she would have to help out with day-to-day. They might not have the conversation skills, so she might not be able to work the conversation skills. So she wouldn't have a public speaking position in that. I think that's fair to say, right? Alyssa?
Yeah, no, most likely not.
I didn't know about any of this until months after his death. When I talk about his death as a suicide.
But she did write a book, and she did spend a lot of time writing letters. An absurd amount of time writing letters in the book.
I'm not trying to downplay the viciousness he showed at the end of his life. I'm trying to understand how his suicidal thinking led to murder. After a lot of reading and talking with experts, I've come to believe that his involvement in the shootings was rooted not in his desire to kill, but in his desire to die. The third challenge I have when I talk about my son's murder-suicide is that I'm talking about mental health. Is that I'm talking about mental health, or brain health, as I prefer to call it, because it's more concrete.
Now, I do want to point out that, you notice what she did right there?
No.
She took an innocuous concept like mental health, this trivial thing that exists and that we can't measure, and called it brain health, so it was physical and measurable.
Right.
That's a normal thing with any of her speeches or lectures or any of her conversations, is that she takes something trivial and kind of waters it down. A Google user asked, when did she read this journal entry out of curiosity, before or after? It was about somewhere between 5 to 8 months afterwards. The police found the journals and refused to release them to her for several months. She didn't know anything about her son.
And in the same breath, I'm talking about violence. The last thing I want to do is to contribute to the misunderstanding that already exists around mental illness. Only a very small percent of those who have a mental illness are violent toward other people. But of those who die by suicide, it's estimated that about 75 to maybe more than 90% have a diagnosable mental health condition of some kind. As you all know very well, our mental health care system is not equipped to help everyone. And not everyone with destructive thoughts fits the criteria for a specific diagnosis. Many who have ongoing feelings of fear or anger or hopelessness are never assessed or treated. Too often they get our attention only if they reach a behavioral crisis. If estimates are correct, that about 1 to 2% of all suicides involves the murder of another person, when suicide rates rise, as they are rising for some populations, then murder-suicide rates will rise as well. I wanted to understand what was going on in Dylan's mind prior to his death, so I looked for answers from other survivors of suicide loss. I did research and volunteered to help with fundraising events, and whenever I could, I talked with those who had survived their own suicidal crisis or attempt. One of the most helpful conversations I had was with a coworker who overheard me talking to someone else in my office cubicle. She heard me say that Dylan could not have loved me if he...
Hey, sorry to interrupt. Are you on the John YouTube account, or are you... Yes, no?
Am I on the John YouTube account?
Yeah.
No.
Okay. Okay, I just wanted to, double check that.
Yeah, no.
He could do something as horrible as he did. Later, when she found me alone, she apologized for overhearing that conversation, but told me that I was wrong. She said that when she was a young single mother with 3 small children, she became severely depressed and was hospitalized to keep her safe. At the time, she was certain that her children would be better off if she died, so she had made a plan to end her life. She assured me that a mother's love was the strongest bond on earth, and that she loved her children more than anything in the world. But because of her illness, she was sure that they would be better off without her. What she said, and what I've learned from others, is that we do not make the so-called decision or choice to die by suicide in the same way that we choose what car to drive or where to go on a Saturday night. When someone is in an extremely suicidal state, they are in a stage 4 medical health emergency. Their thinking is impaired and they've lost access to tools of self-governance. Even though they can make a plan and act with logic, their sense of truth is distorted by a filter of pain through which they interpret their reality. Some people can be very good at hiding this state, and they often have good reasons for doing that. Many of us have suicidal thoughts at some point, but persistent, ongoing thoughts of suicide and devising a means to die are symptoms of pathology. And like many illnesses, the condition has to be recognized and treated before a life is lost. But my son's death was not purely a suicide. It involved mass murder. I wanted to know how his suicidal thinking became homicidal. But research is sparse, and there are no simple answers. Yes, he probably had ongoing depression. He had a personality that was perfectionistic and self-reliant, and that made him less likely to seek help from others. He had experienced triggering events at the school that left him feeling debased and humiliated and mad. And he had a complicated friendship with a boy who shared his feelings of rage and alienation, and who was seriously disturbed, controlling, and homicidal.
So, you notice how she puts everything on Eric Harris there?
Yeah.
That's a pattern.
Oh, yeah.
That's a big pattern, a big red flag for me, and that's where I started to question. For a while when I first listened to this, I was moved by her speech, and then she pinned everything directly onto Eric Harris. And said
Well, and that's why this lady drives me nuts. Like, I know she's also, I'm sure went through a ton of shit after this incident occurred, but at the same time, like,
she's quoted as saying in different interviews that she believed that her son was innocent and that Eric, at the time in like the early 2000s,
oh yeah, he coaxed Dylan into doing this.
that he coaxed Dylan into doing this, and that evidence of this was that Eric's parents never spoke out, and then wondered why, like later on, they would never talk to her to collaborate with her book.
Oh, it says stream is unavailable. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, okay.
Let me see what it was for.
I'm telling him to hang tight. It just says unavailable. It doesn't say. Does that mean that it was like flagged?
Copyright.
Oh, but I see it now. Like it's back. Weird.
Oh my god.
I bet it's this video. It's back up. Just be careful.
Let me see real quick before I do anything if I can figure out why it's blocked for copyright. Before we do anything else.
Yeah. No, it's a good idea. Non-micro said, how the fuck did they find this so fast?
Yeah. I was expecting it to be sooner. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah, we got through quite a bit.
You know what? That's okay, though. I have an idea. So we're at 9:26. We're going to take the extra case. I planned for this. I have a downloaded version of this fucking thing, and I'm going to load it really quickly.
Hey, WFO Racing. John said TED Talks doesn't want the truth revealed.
Guys, can you all freak out in chat for me? I'd appreciate it. I just need everyone to immediately start speaking in chat. I'd appreciate you.
John said go audio only.
Yeah, I am. But I'm also doing something else. See, I actually have a downloaded copy of the video, so I can just do this. So it's not even giving them any views. You won't fuck with me? I'll just do audio only. Take it off the screen, and I'll play it from my personal archive.
Trolling and homicidal. And on top of this period in his life of extreme vulnerability and fragility, Dylan found access to guns, even though we'd never owned any in our home. It was appallingly easy for a 17-year-old boy to buy guns, both legally and illegally, without my permission or knowledge. And somehow, 17 years and many school shootings later, it's still appallingly easy. What Dylan did that day broke my heart. And as trauma so often does, it took a toll on my body and on my mind. 2 years after the shootings, I got breast cancer. And 2 years after that, I began to have mental health problems. On top of the constant, perpetual grief, I was terrified that I would run into a family member of someone Dylan had killed, or be accosted by the press or by an angry citizen. I was afraid to turn on the news, afraid to hear myself being called a terrible parent or a disgusting person. I started having panic attacks. The first bout started 4 years after the shootings, when I was getting ready for the depositions and would have to meet the victims' families face to face. The second round started 6 years after the shootings, when I was preparing to speak publicly about murder-suicide for the first time at a conference. Both episodes lasted several weeks. The attacks happened everywhere, in the hardware store, in my office, or even while reading a book in bed. My mind would suddenly lock into this spinning cycle of terror, and no matter how hard I tried to calm myself down or reason my way out of it, I couldn't do it. It felt as if my brain was trying to kill me. And then being afraid of being afraid consumed all of my thoughts. That's when I learned firsthand what it feels like to have a malfunctioning mind. And that's when I truly became a brain health advocate. With therapy and medication and self-care, life eventually returned to whatever could be thought of as normal under the circumstances. When I look back on all that had happened, I could see that my son's spiral into dysfunction probably occurred over a period of about 2 years. Plenty of time to get him help. If only someone had known that he needed help and known what to do. Every time someone asks me, "How could you not have known?" it feels like a punch in the gut. It carries accusation and taps into my feelings of guilt that no matter how much therapy I've had, I will never fully eradicate. But here's something I've learned. If love were enough to stop someone who was suicidal from hurting themselves, suicides would hardly ever happen. But love is not enough, and suicide is prevalent. It's the second leading cause of death for people aged 10 to 34. And 15% of American youth report having made a suicide plan in the last year. I've learned that no matter how much we want to believe we cannot know or control everything our loved ones think and feel. And the stubborn belief that we are somehow...
So, Kales, real quick. You asked the question of why is she acting like the main issue here is that he was suicidal, not homicidal. You know, people ask that in the comment section of the YouTube video, and you would think that maybe there'd be answers, but they just turned the comments to fuck off. That was their solution. Their solution to any interesting question, why are they talking about one issue when it was clearly a whole different issue? She takes this narrative of what fucking happened and changes it to what she wants to talk about, to downplay it, because she herself doesn't want to talk about her son being a homicidal maniac. You see, it's more about changing what it is to rebrand the problem into another problem so that you don't have to acknowledge the first problem. It's like if I kicked a hole in a wall, but then put a curtain on that wall, and then you asked me about the hole in the wall that I didn't cover correctly, so I moved the curtain away towards the hole so that you couldn't see the hole and said, well, I put the curtain on there because the wall was blank. And you asked me, what about the hole? And I said, what hole? The curtain has always been there. There's no hole. That's what happens with any conversation with her. Sue Klebold is a master class of taking the idea of suicidal words. I can never pronounce ideations correctly. Suicidal ideations and merging them into homicidal ideations and then kicking homicidal ideations completely out of the ballpark. It's about changing the meaning. It's very rare that someone who has words. It's very rare that someone who is homicidal has a super great home life or didn't have something horrible happen to them as a kid. Even if they had a violent nature, nurture could curb that. But again, this is an ill-equipped mother who spends her time nurturing other people. And I cannot help but ask myself, how much was she helping the people that she said she was helping? How much was she really helping the disabled? I can't know, but to me, anything that Sue says is suspect. Because her whole job is caring for people, and her son went out and did this, and then she's spending all of her time rationalizing how her son behaved. Alyssa, you want to throw in any thoughts?
What was that last thing that you said? You cut out.
I said, God. I
Sorry.
said that no. It's just about thinking about what I just said.
You were saying how
Yeah.
it makes you wonder.
It makes me
how
wonder
well
how they
she
can
really helped.
deal with the disabled when she can't even deal with her own son.
Right.
And then,
Well, I mean, on that, I think that we choose to see what we want to see. Like, you're working with people who are disabled. You know that they have these issues.
well, Elizabeth, how many people do you work with in a situation where the disabled are involved that just blame it on the disabled person every chance that they get?
Not many.
But you get a few.
But yeah, there are a few who don't understand like how to deal with someone with a disability. Yeah.
And how easy would it be for everyone to just blame the same disabled person instead of acknowledging maybe there's a different perspective?
Right. Yeah, I'm sure I don't know, we're kind of trained not to do that. So they're kind of the odd ones out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I know this might be a sidetracked a little bit. I just have to say this because
Take your time.
watching her annoys the shit out of me. So much so that like there's one half of me that's like, okay, I know she's been through something terrible, but has she really been through something terrible? Like, yeah, okay, it's terrible that your son did this.
Who often died for his beliefs.
But she's not like addressing it that way. She's not addressing it like, I had a horrible time after my son did this, and he's responsible for his actions. She's like coming up with every excuse in the book as to why like someone else should have helped him. Not me, because I didn't know. I had no idea, but someone else should have known.
There are articles out there of everyone from Casey Johnson to other Columbine survivors that didn't get much media attention saying, did the parents know? And again, the van. I point everything at that van. It doesn't matter what anyone says. The parents knew that something was off. They did a felony break-in on a van. And then the cop came over and they were like pretending that they weren't breaking into a fucking van. Non-microwavable. Up till then, I thought I was a good mom. So, no matter
frustrating
how you frame her, though, the worst part is she gets the most say in any of the survivors or any of the victims. And she's listed as a survivor or victim of the shooting in a lot of lists.
I don't believe that should not be. That should not be.
People see her as a victim.
But she wasn't like, I understand a victim in the sense that like, yeah, okay, your son did something horrible, but you weren't even there. You have no idea. She's heard about it, but she didn't experience it.
Let me go to ABC News' video real quick and read you some comments, okay?
Okay.
In the Columbine community, Sue Klebold was recognized as a caring and engaged mother. At any moment, any parent could find themselves in her position. She deserves empathy, not blame. The top comment, 1.6 thousand likes. Another comment, 2.2 thousand likes later down. She straight up said she prayed for his death. She's not defending her son at all and saying he did a terrible thing. This woman deserves no hate. Her son does. They're not the same person. Because
I do agree with that too, though.
in some she'll blame her son, but not in this one. When she's given the choice to talk about anything involving the incident, she talks about her son being suicidal, not homicidal.
Right. And like I agree that she shouldn't be put in his shoes. Like they shouldn't be, going after her because they can't go after him.
Yeah.
But he also has a dad too. And I don't see him nearly getting as much,
Well, she's the one who chose
hit back.
to write.
But that's what I was just gonna say. That's what I was just gonna say. She's also the one who put herself out there. Like if this happened to me, if I were in her shoes, I would not be plastering myself everywhere.
No, I'd be saying this wasn't my son. This was a monster that replaced my son.
Like, I don't know. And it's tough because it's like you're a mom or a father and like you have this responsibility to be there for your kids. And if they do something horrible, like do you just disown them? Like I know that's what you're supposed to do, but do you? I don't know. If one of my kids did something horrible, I don't know if I could just jump on the bandwagon and be like they're the worst person that ever lived and they deserve it all. I don't know. But I surely wouldn't place blame on everybody else and make my kid out to be, the victim.
I have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see why I chose this topic for you?
Yeah.
Did it piss you off?
Yeah, she pisses me off.
I knew she would. I knew she would. So, do you want to explain your relation at all, or
to her?
Yeah, how much you have in common? Like,
I mean, well, we both obviously have children, and we both work with people, disabled adults. Well, I don't know if she worked with adults, but I work with disabled adults. So I mean, that's most of what we have in common.
That's also a lot more than most people. That's the worst part of it.
Yeah.
Because you know her on an occupational level as well. And that's half of the day, and the other half is being a mom.
Mm-hmm.
So you know basically a similar idea of what her day-to-day is. That's why I brought this up to you. And the other reason I brought it up to you, though, is that you are a very angry person when it comes to injustice, and I know how you are. So I just want you to know that there was a reason why I specifically did all of this to show you Sue Klebold. We have 1 minute and 40 seconds left. And I just want you to know it doesn't get any better than this.
I'm sure.
Anything that Sue says is a cope to deal with her own poorly mismanaged household. And that's the sad thing about it. I don't know why her husband left. I don't know if it's ever been public. All I know is everything that she says is cope. She spends a lot of time either disowning her son or talking about suicide. The comments I read on other things, the top comments are like that, but if you look at the lesser comments, anything that shows hatred towards Sue gets removed by ABC News. If you go on BBC's video of Sue Klebold, it doesn't fucking have comments enabled, just like the TED Talk. They just don't let you talk about her. They don't let you discuss how you feel about her because some people see the manipulation tactics.
Which it's crazy though. It's crazy though because you can go on other things and you can victim blame people Like, I don't know. But with her, you shut down the comments so no one can say anything bad about Sue.
Yeah.
And like, even her even her disowning publicly her son, it feels to me like she's just doing it to make herself look better.
Yeah, everything is to make herself look better.
Like, none of it feels genuine at all. This talk is like the most emotionless talk
It's
there's no
calculated.
emotion. Yeah, there's no emotion to it. She doesn't feel anything she's saying.
She reduces the idea of mental health to brain health. She takes it from a mental component, which is invisible, to a physical
And then
component.
talks about how she got cancer 2 years after, and it's because of how much stress she went through.
And then
Like,
she says how she understands mental health all of a sudden because she went through cancer while getting bullied.
I'm sorry, but like, that's to be expected. Not the cancer, but like the being bullied. I know it's not her fault, but like, can you blame people? I don't know. I wouldn't blame people for hating me if one of my kids, like, I understand why. You need someone to blame. They're both dead.
Yep.
So you can't attack them anymore. The next best is their family.
So, are you ready to finish this?
I guess, yeah.
Yeah, this makes you want to drink, doesn't it?
Yeah, a little.
I have 4 Guinnesses in front of me, and I'm on a cherry wheat Samuel Adams. And that would be why.
How different. That someone we love would never think of hurting themselves or someone else can cause us to miss what's hidden in plain sight. And if worst case scenarios do come to pass, we'll have to learn to forgive ourselves for not knowing, or for not asking the right questions, or not finding the right treatment. We should always assume that someone we love may be suffering, regardless of what they say or how they act. We should listen with our whole being, without judgment and without offering solutions. I know that I will live with this tragedy, with these multiple tragedies, for the rest of my life. I know that in the minds of many, what I lost can't compare to what the other families lost. I know my struggle doesn't make theirs any easier. I know there are even some who think I don't have the right to any pain, but only to a life of permanent penance. In the end, what I know comes down to this. The tragic fact is that even the most vigilant and responsible of us may not be able to help. But for love's sake, we must never stop trying to know the unknowable. Thank you.
Oh my God.
So, I do want to give a quote. You saw me put on screen, they can't, though, anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know who Robert Oppenheimer was?
No.
Do you know the phrases fat man and little boy?
I mean, like, no.
So, Fat Man and the Little Boy were the bombs dropped on 2 Japanese cities. One was Nagasaki,
Oh.
and one was Hiroshima,
Yeah.
if I recall correctly. Do you know what happened to the man who led the team that built those bombs?
You are asking me history questions. That was my worst class.
It's okay. I don't expect you to know this. I brought this as a fucking comparison for this. I had it planned out.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what happened to him?
No.
Take a guess.
The man who what? Who?
Oppenheimer, the man who built the atomic bomb.
No, I have no idea. Did he strap himself to it?
Don't you wish? That would be Dr. Strangelove right there. A reference that most people won't get. So Oppenheimer built the atomic bomb, and then he watched as it got dropped twice. And before this, he had, I think 10 years before, had inadvertently donated communist organizations. Oppenheimer, after the bombs were dropped, went on a tour where he had to talk about how he felt. Now, I want you to remember how Sue Klebold spoke, having more direct cause when it comes to a bunch of people dying to this.
We knew the world would not be the same. Few people laughed. Few people cried. Most people were silent. I remembered the line from the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita. Vishnu is trying to persuade the prince that he should do his duty, and to impress him takes on his multi-armed form and says, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." I suppose we all thought that one way or another.
And you could see in his eyes the amount of pain he felt. There are people who have analyzed his facial expressions during that, but the basic idea is that a lot of people say that he felt more pain than anyone would ever feel normally in their lives. And others felt that he was rationalizing his feelings. What happened to him from there was that he had a daughter, and his daughter had applied to become a scientist in the same way that he was. However, she could not get the proper security clearance. So he had smoked himself to death 6 to 7 packs a day until he died. He felt that bad. 6 to 7 packs a day he smoked. 6 to 7 packs every single day of cigarettes.
That's a lot. That's like smoking the entire day.
Yeah. It was probably closer to 3 to 4, but a lot of places say 6 to 7 online. Like, that should give you an idea. His daughter applied for a security clearance and was denied because his father might be a communist. So she ended up killing herself. I believe by hanging. That was his only child.
I feel like that's excessive.
We usually talk about people who, like, make a weapon. They deliberately make themselves suffer. And you can see through their history how everyone around them makes them suffer. The US government forced his daughter to suffer, even though her father was a loyal US citizen who helps them win a fucking war instantly. Oh, he's a communist because he donated to this charity 10 years before, and we knew he donated to that charity. We'd always known, is what the
Where
US
they didn't
government
care about
said.
that when he was helping them.
Then they didn't need him anymore, and he was gone. Simple as that. Robert Oppenheimer, who? Oppenheimer is one of my favorite people in history. He was a shut-in who didn't really know how to deal with people until after he killed a bunch of them. Oh, I forgot about this. His first name was Julius. It's kind of ironic. So,
Back to this fucking lady.
So, John commented, and he had some really good points. Would you mind grabbing him real quick?
Yeah, give me 1 sec. I'll be right back.
Take your time. Robert Oppenheimer or Julius Robert Oppenheimer? My cats were fantastic. One was trying to find out when I was giving him his food. The other was hiding under the bed because she always hides under the bed.
Hello.
Hello, you had some good points on mental health.
Oh no, I mean like just listening to the things that she was saying. I mean like she's obviously a very frustrating person to listen to talk, but I think it would be a lot easier to handle if she was just like, I don't deserve to be held accountable for the crimes of my son. And if she just said that instead of it being this like wishy-washy, I also feel very bad for what my son did. Like, no, you just say that you're disconnected from it entirely. He was a piece of shit. Denounce him entirely. Say he was a piece of shit. I hated him his entire life. He was an awful monster, and he deserved. I hope he burns in hell. Instead of this, I loved my son, and none of this was really his fault. And also, it's not my fault either. I feel like there would be a lot more sympathy towards her, but I do feel that the entire thought process of her calling it brain health instead of mental health, I think her boomer brain is unable to comprehend the.
Now when you say boomer brain, I can tell it's you. But when you're just spouting science, I think that maybe it's Alyssa pretending to be you to make you seem smarter, because I'm not used to seeing you type like coherently without using some kind of reference to meme culture.
Oh no, it's just like her, like she's just completely incapable. Well, number one, I've been in the living room and Alyssa's been in the office, so it couldn't have been her typing. But she, the whole idea of her not being able to comprehend that, like, I guess what I would say is like her calling it brain health instead of mental health is because she sees mental health as like ghosts. They're not, they're intangible. There's plausible deniability that they exist.
You can't blame yourself for them.
Yeah, and then if you have like a physical problem with your brain, like you have a cat that's knocking over you, it's cats versus ghosts. If you have a cat that's knocking stuff off your counters, you go, that's a cat. It's knocking the stuff off the counters. If there's stuff flying off the counters and there's no reason for it, and you go, that's a ghost. People either look at you like you're crazy or they just completely dismiss you.
Yeah.
So it's easier for her to comprehend, oh, I have a cat knocking things off my counter.
But you know what? Mental health is kind of like a cat knocking things off your counter in a way.
No, it's like a ghost knocking things off your counter.
No. I was gonna use a different euphemism, taking a different direction. It is kind of like a cat knocking things off your counter in a way. It's like your intrusive thoughts have become the forefront, whether positive or negative. And so the cat is just doing whatever the fuck it feels like instead of a reserved and quiet approach to things. It's just like, you need to stab yourself right fucking now. You need to stab those 3 people in front of you. They all have to be stabbed right now.
Yeah. Except in my analogy, there's not really a physical thing there.
No, I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
I know what you're saying.
So
I had that in my head and I had to.
So, I mean, like, I do have sympathy for this woman because, Like,
She didn't deserve it.
she didn't shoot up a school.
Yeah.
But she's by proxy to blame. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Well, you know what it is?
everybody's gonna blame the mom.
Let's be real here, though, John. Out of every parent, she's the only one who fame hoard. I hate to say it like that.
I don't know if it was fame whoring or if it was like she can't live. I mean, just look at her. There's no way that she could live with people thinking a bad thing about her.
That's what I'm saying. Like, it comes down to.
I don't think it's fame. I think that there's a difference between fame whoring and getting out in front of a situation.
Well, you can have local fame. You know, you can have people around who know who you are. Maybe she wanted to be the best disability worker in her town.
Well, that ship has sailed.
But that's my point. Like,
that's not gonna happen.
Maybe that's what it is that it's on a lesser scale fame whoring. And then it just kind of progressed to where she's on TED Talk.
But I mean, like, she probably was a terrible mother, and then her son did a terrible thing because of her terrible mothering. Yeah. And then she had to go out and become this TED talker so she could go to coffee with Linda again, and have Linda be like, "You're right. Your son was an awful prick, and he left you with this awful."
Say for closure, but that's, you know what? The worst part is I believe your answer more than I believe mine.
There's no closure.
No.
It's like 9/11. Nobody ever gets any closure. There's no fucking, like, what? You have to come up, for closure to happen, you have to come up with a rational reason for the event to have happened. And there is none. There is no rational reason why two boys decided to have gay sex and then shoot a bunch of their classmates.
Yeah, I mean, when you put it that way.
They could have just stopped at the gay sex, and in 20 years, they would have been idols. Yeah. You know, they would have been like gay sex icons. But instead, no, they had to commit violence.
All right,
which I think is good. If you commit, I think violence is a very useful. It's a solution.
I'll see you on Wednesday.
Yeah, it might be the final solution, but it's a solution.
Oh God!
Right?
Don't! I already got copyright claim this fucking stream, you asshole. Don't put that in the world too. I hate you. All right, I'll see you Wednesday though.
Yes, I'm gonna have Alyssa come back on.
Good. Go.
Close out the stream.
I don't need that shit.
It was a good stream. It was a good stream.
Buddy. When are you gonna
love
stream?
you.
Hold on, you told me you were gonna stream tomorrow, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna stream. Well, I'm not saying that I'm doing anything.
I thought you were gonna stream tomorrow, right?
I'm not saying that I'm doing anything.
I thought that you were gonna have a competing stream with me while I stream Doki Doki Literature Club. You're gonna stream like Heavy Metal Death Panic or something like that.
All right. Yeah, let's do that. We'll do something like that. All right. I love you.
Love you too, bud. No, I don't want to be copyright struck again. Okay, chat, how are you doing today? Yeah, we all have. God damn, where is she?
Hello?
Hello!
Hello.
We are finishing up the stream, so is there anything else you wish to add?
No, other than how annoying this fucking lady is.
I want to hand you the microphone. No. I want to hand you the microphone. Talk about every single person you've seen today and witnessed today.
I agree that I think Casey was the one that I felt the most empathy for. The one that came out of it on top and did some good with her situation. Um, hello?
You're good. Keep going.
Oh,
I
okay.
just closed that
Okay.
so it would save speed.
Got it. Austin, I feel bad for. Um,
I really feel bad for Austin.
you
I
know,
just want
he
to
was
say,
he was dealt a bad deck. It was not his fault.
and the worst part of it is that people will remember him as a guy who was the hypocrite rather than a guy who sadly was a victim of something he warned everyone against.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that too. And as much as I want to have sympathy for Sue Klebold, I have a hard time. I feel like had she just not really said much or like apologized and then like that was it. I understand she probably doesn't want the whole world to hate her.
Yeah.
But I don't feel like the stance that she had and the way she put herself out there made it any better. It made her look really manipulative and maybe not to all, but it was off-putting for me. I'm sure, like I said, it's not her fault that it all happened, but there is a little bit of responsibility in there as a parent. She didn't say, Dylan, go do this. I support you. But she also didn't do anything to like be a proactive parent to stop it. When she knew he was in trouble, when she saw him doing things that were not what every other kid was doing. And I do feel like, there are plenty of other survivors that deserve way more time telling their story than she does. I don't consider her a victim.
No, she's not. And she has the most pull, and that's what disturbs me the most about this. Austin, I think, should have the most pull. And then Craig Scott, and then Casey.
I was going to say Craig Scott and Casey.
I didn't get into Craig's stuff, but I really feel like he had a perfectly good amount to what he had to say.
I'm not gonna lie, my heart goes out to Craig Scott because he was also in the library.
Yep. Yes, he was.
And he witnessed two of his friends be murdered right next to him. And then he describes in a video that I watched, he describes how he ran through the fields and finally got to the police cars and was relieved and realized that his sister, he didn't know where his sister was. And he found out that she was one of the first people shot, and she was shot in that field that he ran right by. And he's like, I ran by my sister while she was dying.
Yeah, that part to me is horrific. I didn't add him, not because I think his story is lesser. And
yeah,
I wanted to, but the problem was that I mean, I have a video up where I could just play it at the ending. I could probably play it out for the ending, to the ending of the stream. But Craig Scott specifically had to deal with the fact that his sister had passed away pretty quickly after being shot. And he couldn't have done anything. Like, the biggest thing I've always heard in Craig's voice is that yeah, he passed her body, but he couldn't do anything. He couldn't save her. He couldn't.
Right. Yeah, no, there was nothing he could have done.
It was better for him to keep running. The only thing he could do is keep her message alive.
Yeah. And I did feel bad for him too, because I know like he talks about like that morning and how like the last thing that happened between the two of them was they had gotten into an argument. It wasn't like a serious argument.
No, it was fine.
But he was like, I didn't know that was the last time that I was going to see her. And so, we all have, well, not everyone, but when you have a sibling, you know how it is. They piss you off.
Oh, yeah.
And you never think that argument is going to be the last time that you get to see them.
Yeah, I don't talk to that motherfucker anymore. It's just every conversation ends in an argument. I'm like, hey, how you doing? Do you have a job? You know, it's not worth it anymore. Get a job, you fucking bum. No, I do feel bad for him. I specifically left out a few good stories. I would recommend, if anyone watches this video all the way through and makes it to this point, please, for the love of fuck, when you hear something bad has happened, listen to the survivors. Give them a platform. Everyone gives the killers a platform. Give the survivors a platform. Listen to what they have to say. And please, pay attention. Keep notes if you have to. We don't always get Anthony Borges. Sometimes we get David Hogg. But we do get Anthony Borges. David Hogg filmed the shooting, and that was pretty much... But Anthony Borges, and this is why I brought him so early in it, a juxtaposition. Anthony Borges got shot in both legs and his back, and then used his body to seal a fucking door shut, thinking that it would save more lives, and that was his primary concern. He was 15 years old. You're probably in your 20s or 30s. You might be in your teens. That motherfucker is more of a hero than anyone here will ever be. And we'll talk about these murderers for years to come instead of this hero. And he's still doing shit. He's still going out and he's still trying to do things for his community. He's still trying to help out. He had to sue his school because they won't pay his medical bills. That's how ridiculous his story gets.
Wait a second, what?
Oh, yeah. Anthony Borges.
They won't pay his medical bills?
His school didn't want to pay his medical bills. So his family... The reason his story got published in the first place was that his family had to hire a lawyer to sue Parkland School to get his medical bills paid because the school wasn't going to fucking pay his medical bills.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Let that sink in. Let that fucking shit sink in right now. They weren't going to pay his fucking medical bills. They're just going to
happened under your watch. That's under your watch.
Yeah, and they're just going to ignore it.
What? Yeah,
Like,
that's crazy.
if
I'm
you-
mind blown by that, actually.
He didn't call himself a hero. His lawyer in the propaganda called him a hero to make sure that people knew this motherfucker wasn't getting his medical bills paid by the school.
Right.
It was a multi-million-dollar lawsuit, too.
Please tell me he won.
Yeah. Oh, God, yeah.
Okay.
No, yeah, he won. He needed physical therapy. He needed the rehabilitation. He needed, like, actual therapy. He needed 5 bullet wounds to be treated. I'm sure that they had to remove at least 3 of those bullets from his body. They're probably still in there in different points. I'm not sure how much stitches cost in the hospital, but I'm sure it costed him a lot. Like, just think about that alone. And there's more, because he had to have 14 surgeries. When I read that article to you, there's a reason. He had 14 fucking surgeries to deal with his pain and his actual muscle issues and his... And they told him he might be able to play soccer? Now he knows he can't. He might have been able to go and play competitively in the World Cups that he wanted to go into. He can't. It sucks, but he probably will never be able to. I mean, stranger things have happened. People have had more tenacity, but that man's had so much tenacity that I'm not sure if he's tapped out yet or not.
Right.
He had to sue his fucking school district. That's how crazy this world is.
That should have been a no-brainer. Like, yeah, of course we'll pay your medical bills.
And they refused.
It just goes to show, like, they don't... not that they don't care at all, but, like, how do you have something
They're
that
all
tragic
about
happen
saving
to
their
you?
own ass rather than actually dealing with a tragic event.
Right.
How it goes. That's how life be sometimes, man. Look at it, the bright side of things. Okay, Alyssa? Could be worse.
I guess so.
We could just remove the term mental health from the dictionary and replace it with brain health and then look for physical signs again. Go back to the 70s way of thinking. Is it physical? I don't fucking know. That kid has Asperger's. That whole system.
You know, the whole system, the school system, the mental health system, the medical system, all of it is fucked.
Yeah.
The legal system,
Oh,
nothing,
God, yeah.
none of it is the way it should be. I'm not exactly sure how it should be. Like, I don't have all the answers, but the way that it is fucked.
Anthony Borges didn't want to be considered a hero. He just wanted his medical bills paid. Motherfucker,
Right.
it's like that old woman in the McDonald's coffee line. She didn't want to seal her vagina shut with the coffee, but she had to sue McDonald's for the pay her medical bills when the coffee turned out to be 400 and some degrees, and she accidentally spilled some on her lap. Did you know about that, by the way? That's the caution law case.
Yeah.
Like, we don't want it to happen, but these people push back because they think, oh, well, they'll take advantage.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there are the very few
Yep.
that like to put themselves even in harm's way just for a little settlement.
Kill, that's what? I gotta ask what she means.
Probably the McDonald's coffee.
Alright, I'm gonna assume that's what kills means. If kills means that, please let me know. So, Kales, to explain that one, the woman in the caution hot lawsuit between McDonald's and that one woman that gets labeled as a Karen on everything, it actually poured down. She was 70 something years old, and
Poor old
poured
lady.
into her, like, it actually sealed her vagina shut. It actually sealed it shut, like the burns from the coffee. And it's worth knowing that she was in her 70s, but the media painted her like she was in her 30s or 40s to say she had been working a stable job and was just rushing to get to work. But there are photos, Kales, there are photos online of the exact injury, and they were published as a response to the Caution Hot lawsuit, where this woman's family had to post photos of this woman's very sad genitalia that had been mangled. She couldn't even urinate correctly. And she asked McDonald's to pay for her medical bills to have things fixed. And they offered her store credit for future
First of
McDonald's
all,
purchases.
I like my coffee hot, not hot enough to sear my vagina closed.
I could get those photos on stream. I've already been warned once today. Why not a second time? But no, you can live like Kales. Just go on Google and type in. Let me type it in myself first and get eye bleach because it's a 70-year-old woman, and then I'll tell you what to type it. Okay? Talk, Alyssa. Distract them while I do this.
I don't know how coffee gets that hot, to be honest with you. Like it, and everyone's like, "Oh, it's so dumb that they have to write on there like contents of this cup may be hot," and it's like they do that now so that they can't get sued when their coffee is 500,000 degrees and it burns you. But it should never be that hot to begin with. You can't drink that. Like it just shouldn't. I've never had a coffee that hot before.
All right, I have found.
Do you drink coffee, Asami?
I drink coffee all the time.
I love coffee.
All right. Here's what I'm gonna do. Kales, are you on Discord? Because I can send you a link to the photo right now, and you can describe it for the class if you want to. They did so much smearing on her too, and technically it's not legal defamation either, and that's what really sickens me. See, you get it. You're an iced coffee gal. I'll drink anything that isn't sugared down to fuck. So I can't post this in the chat. So Kales, here you go. It's horrific. Absolutely horrific. Do you want to see what it looks like, Alyssa? And then
Yeah,
John
you
will
know
be
what?
forced to look at it next time he comes on.
Yeah, send it to me.
There you go.
God, okay. Hold on. I'm scared. Oh my God. I mean, they covered it a little bit.
They did, thankfully. But you can see it's literally sealed shut.
That is not a little bit of coffee.
No?
She spilled the whole cup on herself. Oh my God.
Yeah.
When I
See,
tell you guys, like the whole inside of her thighs, oh my God,
I
are
worked at a Wawa.
completely melted.
They go to 220 degrees and they say that that's good. McDonald's was going above 400 for this to happen.
Like, why though?
I'll delete that so John doesn't accidentally stumble into that, okay?
No, you should leave it.
You know what? I'll pin it.
Yeah. Leave
You know what? You know what? If you go into our pins, by the way, Alyssa, you'll see that John sent a nitpick.
Oh, I believe it.
Just click the pins real quick and you'll see it.
See all pinned messages.
Non-microwavable. I will send you this picture too so that you can see it. It's now going to show up in our messages. You won't need to click anything. It'll just be there non-microwavable. You know what, Kales? It doesn't need to be that hot. They chose for it to be that hot so that they could market it as fresh, because what they assumed was that you would drive it to your work before drinking it. Their whole assumption was that your work was 15 minutes away from the McDonald's, and that you would drive from the McDonald's to
I
your
take a
workplace.
sip of my coffee
and
the
then drink
moment I
it.
get it because it's a drug and I need it.
Yeah, that's what everyone does. And then they think to themselves, this is too hot. But if you don't have full motor functionality, like a 72-year-old woman wouldn't, then you're going to shake too much and it's going to spill all over you and seal your coochie shut. That's how that fucking works.
Can you imagine how much pain she had to have been in?
You
Like,
know,
I
I'm
understand that
microwavable
she
so
spilled it
sick.
on herself. But under no circumstances should their coffee be that fucking hot. It doesn't even matter if it says on the cup that the contents may be hot. It shouldn't be 400 degrees.
I've been hit by a car before, and all I can remember is that looking at the wounds that she has, they are consistent with if you have your jeans melted into you. Me, when
So
I
there's
made
just Yeah.
Kale, me when I made sure the popcorn was extra hot the movie so people wouldn't ask if it was fresh. Oh man,
Just
it's
crazy.
just fucking painful.
And these are the things, like, we all hear about these stories, right? We hear about the hot coffee lady and how she got burned, and that's why it says that on the cup. But I never saw that fucking picture before.
You never even knew it was a 70-year-old woman.
I did, actually. That
Oh,
I
you
knew.
did?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. There are other pictures of her, by the way. That's the nicest one I can find. I want you to know that. That's the nicest one that I can find. There are others I could show you right now. And I don't think you'd want that.
No, I'm good.
What she wanted, all she wanted, by the way, was to feel whole again. She didn't care about making money off of it.
No, she wanted her fucking medical bills paid so she could take care of her now medical condition that was caused by McDonald's.
Yep. All right, I'm going to end the stream. I'm tired.
Alrighty.
Do you want to say any last thing about how you feel about all of this tonight?
No, you successfully made me pissed.
So in future, I can expect to drag you on to torture future guests?
Yeah.
And in future, you know exactly what to expect when I'm torturing future guests?
For the most part, I think. I mean, there's always that level of like uncertainty when it comes to a see me.
Last thing I want to ask, what part bothered you the most tonight?
What bothered me the most?
Yeah.
Susan.
I was
Klebold.
expecting it to be when you when I made you look up Austin Eubanks.
No, actually. I mean, I was saddened by that. I was like, oh man, that sucks.
You're like, you did that on purpose, and I know you fucking did.
Yeah, I realized after I did. I was like, this fucking asshole.
I told you, it's partial research, partial make the guests suffer. What can I say? I'm good at both of those two things.
That you are.
Alright, I'm gonna end the stream. Do you have any song recommendations, chat, for the stream ends? Just
Any
don't
what?
Song recommendations for the stream ends. Just don't get me fucking struck.
No.
Anyone I threw the moderator wrench to, by the way, can send links in the chat and I will click them, by the way. I just want everyone to know that. You're not meant to ban or kick or mute or remove. John, can you post your new song and I will gladly play it as the outro?
Send the link.
I'm just gonna wait here forever for John to post it.
The Duck Grape Lemonade song.
You know what? She has a point. I'm going with the Duck Grape Lemonade song.
No, you gotta play John's song.
Oh, no. I can do it a different day. Don't worry. I just want to piss John off as much as I can. So he has to come on the show to tell me how much he fucking hates me.
Tell me the duck story.
I can go get him.
Alright,
Alyssa, you have a fantastic night, okay?
You too. Thank you for having me. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
The man said, no, we just sell lemonade, but it's cold and it's fresh and it's all homemade. Can I get you a glass? The duck said, I'll pass. Then he waddled away, waddle, till the very next day, bum, 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 when the duck walked up to the lemonade stand and he said...
Okay, John said play them both at the same time. John, just give me 1 second. Just, give me 1 second, okay? See, this is what happens when I like two creators at the same time. I love both of your work. You both make me happy. This is what happens. So I gotta copy this fucking link and then paste it. Give me 1 second, okay? Okay. Oh fuck, hold on. Give me a second, I'm being retarded for a second. Hold on.
Can I get you a glass? The duck said, I'll pass. Then he waddled away. The man said, no, like I said yesterday, we just sell lemonade, okay? Why not give it a try? The duck said, goodbye. Then he waddled away, waddle. Then he waddled away, waddle. Then he waddled away, waddle. Till the very next day, bum, 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 when the duck walked up to the lemonade stand and he said to the man running the stand, hey, bum, 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 got any grapes? The man said, look, this is getting old. I mean, lemonade's all we've ever sold. Why not give it a go? The duck the duck walked up to the lemonade stand and he said to the man running the stand, "Hey, got any grapes?" The man said, "That's it. If you don't stay away, Duck, I'll glue you to a tree and leave you there all day stuck. So don't get too close." The duck said, "Adios." Then he waddled away, waddle, waddle. Then he waddled away, waddle, waddle, waddle. Then he waddled away, waddle, waddle. When the duck walked up to the lemonade stand and he said to the man running the stand, "Hey, got any glue?" "What? On top of this got any glue?" "No, why would I know?" "One more question for you." Dylan found access to God. "Got any grapes?" "Even though we've never owned it on our home. This is a part of the reason." The man just stopped. He started to run. He laughed for a while. He said, "Come on, Duck, let's walk to the store. I'll buy you some grapes, so you won't have to ask anymore." So they walked to the store, and the man bought some grapes. He gave one to the duck, and the duck said, "No thanks." What Dylan did that day broke his heart. But you know what sounds good? And it would make my day. Do you think this store? Do you think this store? Do you think this store has any lemonade? Then he waddled away, waddle, waddle.
I really fucking hate you guys for choosing this. Guys, you have a fantastic night. Fuck you all. Love you all.